This episode is about minutes 106 through 110 of The Empire Strikes Back with returning guest Dan Golding. Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Chrysanthi Tan, feel free to call me Xanthi, and today is all about minutes 106 through 110 of Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. We pretty much get the entirety of the queue through the window, 11M1, and this set of minutes takes us through the evacuation of Cloud City, as well as lots of clashy lightsaber fighting between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. Dan, I am so pleased to have you back on the show. This is your third time, and for the few people who don't know who Dan Golding is, I don't even know where to start. Composer, author, teacher, person who makes music and has a podcast called Art of the Score. I listened to your Empire Strikes Back Part 2 recently, which did cover a little bit of this stuff. So, thanks for coming on my show.
Oh, it is an absolute pleasure. It's funny, I started off, I think it was Frank Lehman tweeted about appearing on Star Wars Music Minute, and I think I've sort of gone from, I'll check out Frank's episode, to now being a recurring guest, to having met up with you in person when you visited Melbourne,
twice.
Which is a very unusual thing for, Melbourne's a great city, but it's not a super hot tourist destination, I don't think. So it's really, I feel like it's a rare pleasure to have actually met you in person since the last time we recorded an episode. And now also, I have to say, I feel like I've sort of transitioned into just being a fan and a regular listener of the podcast. I think I've listened to every episode of of the Empire season so far, and have joined the Discord because I just got sick of hearing about all the amazing discussions that were happening there and wanted to join in. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm really, really happy to be here, but particularly to be here for these minutes, because when we had lunch last time, you asked me what my favorite cue was from Empire, and I think I pretty much immediately said the clash of lightsabers.
Yep. So when I got back home, I was like, which set of minutes is Clash of the Lightsabers?
Yeah.
And I put you down for those minutes.
Yeah. And as you said in the intro, this is pretty amazing. It's pretty much this cue start to finish.
It's nice how that worked
minutes. Out. Yeah. So I can't wait to chat about it.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words. Also, when you I remember when you tweeted about listening to Frank Lehman's episode a few seasons ago, and I was like, oh my God, it's Dan Golding.
Oh my God, it's Xanthi Tan.
So, yay, we're here now. And that's awesome.
For sure.
So, just to get started on a little bit of a funny / chaotic note, on the count of 3, say what your favorite part of this set of minutes is.
Oh, no, I can't, because I can, probably, I guess.
We won't discuss it further. We will just say it, and then when we get there, we'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
The resolution of Han and Leia's theme with the pedal theme, pedal note that goes on for 32 bars and then finally resolves. It's I love it so much.
Oh, it's very good.
Yeah.
Well, my part.
But I also.
Oh no!
Go on,
Please, no. Continue. I don't want to cut you off.
I also, it's one of the best renditions of the Imperial March in this movie. I mean, no, it's the best rendition of the Imperial March in this movie. I kind of I have an overarching theory of the music to this film that I think this cue typifies, and that's kind of one of the things that I want to talk about. So it's almost like the combination of everything together. I think I just really like about this cue too.
Well, that is quite a teaser.
Yeah, I may have been thinking a little too much about this.
No, because I have some wild things too. And whenever you're on the show, I bring them out, like these weird references, and I'm like, I'll test them out on Dan because I know you'll know what I'm talking about. So I have a few of those for you. But my answer to my own question was just going to be when 3PO says, "Wonderful."
Yeah. It is. It's a melodious delivery, as he so often has. Like you've said a few times, I think, over the course of the season, like the line delivery that Anthony Daniels has. I think there was even that kind of discussion. I can't remember which episode. Maybe when they're on the inside the beast's mouth, where he kind of screams, and you're like, is that a sound effect, or maybe it's the asteroid field? Actually, is it a sound effect? Is it just Anthony Daniels? Yeah.
Yeah, he's so funny, and I feel like in this TikTok era where we're used to hearing short bits of sound, even stuff like Vine or whatever, short bits of sound on loop, like 3PO would do very well on one of these apps. I feel just short bites of on loop. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, these are two very different highlights from the set of minutes, but we'll get to them both. These minutes start with no music, actually. I will play a bit of what we're hearing at the beginning. Okay, so it's like the clash. Oh, we just got to another one of the mysterious, mysterious exclamation. But yeah, the lightsaber clashing, and I feel like the tunnel and reactor beeping and everything is the music, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. This won't be the first mention of this, but I don't know if you've read this book by
The Empire
Alan,
Strikes Back.
the making of.
No.
So it's called Once Upon a Galaxy: A Journal of the Making of The Empire Strikes Back. It's by Alan Arnold, who was the publicist on the film. And so he was basically hanging around production from start to finish, interviewing people because he had to keep the press at bay, but also provide them with press releases and tidbits and all that kind of stuff. He recorded a whole lot of stuff and transcribed it and wrote it up. And it is just the most incredible resource for the behind the scenes making of this film. But I was rereading it, and the discussion with Ben Burtt. I mean, it's interesting because he kind of, positions himself as really coming into his own on this film. Like he sort of talks about how for the first film he feels like he was really just commissioned to create a sound library rather than being like a sound designer. Like he was just, his task was to go out there and find a lightsaber sound and find an R2-D2 sound or something like that. But in this film, he kind of feels like, according to this interview, feels like a bit of a artistic collaborator for the first time, and he still expresses frustration that he and the composer don't get a chance to kind of work together. A lot of this is in this book is, this is really super fandom era, right? So a lot of them are quite unguarded about what they have to say. And he talks about being quite annoyed that he wasn't invited to the spotting session for this film. And so I've always wondered about this sequence. I've heard people say that John Williams wrote music and it wasn't used. I don't know if that's true or not. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just spotted to have no sound because it feels really deliberative.
You mean no music?
Yeah, sorry. No music, thank you. But the sound design in the sequence is really fantastic. And so, after the rest of the film having pretty much wall-to-wall music except for, a couple of sequences on Dagobah, like it really feels like it's sort of finally the ground has kind of come out from underneath you, that reassuring emotional support that a soundtrack gives you. And it's kind of like, oh, what are we supposed to expect here? I don't know, because the music's not here. It's quite interesting.
That's a really interesting insight. because I have wondered, I mean, Ben Burtt and John Williams are each talked about in their own, like as silos, basically. We never really hear much about them interacting with each other. And yeah, that is something that I've definitely wondered about. Yeah. And Cloud City is an amazing showcase of Ben Burtt's sound design.
Yeah. And I mean, especially as well, like, I actually don't know too much about because, by the time they made the prequels, the PR machine is a lot more polished. There's not really that same kind of unguarded interview type thing. But right. Ben Burtt was the editor, the film editor on Attack of the Clones.
Film editor?
Yeah, like as in he edited the film, not just he wasn't just the sound designer. Yeah. So he moved into film editing. So I think there was a lot of speculation, I think, at the time that like he as editor prioritized the sound design over the music, and certainly Attack of the Clones is one of the Star Wars films with one of the strongest sound design to music ratio. I mean, there's also the Geonosis battle, which starts out without score for a very extended period of time, for example, and really showcases Burt's sound effects. So yeah, like I would love to know a little bit more about that behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, for sure. But you know what? Can I, while I'm on this, I have to, because this is the scene that it's relevant to before we move on. What page is that? 145. So probably easily the best bit of this book is for the shooting of the carbon freeze scene. Irvin Kershner actually agreed to be mic'd up in his directing of it. So had a little, microphone on him the whole couple of days that they filmed this.
Like a little lav mic?
Yeah. I don't know whether they would have had the same lav tech. Probably, I guess. I don't know whether you'd have like a little wireless thing though. Anyway.
Whatever.
But
whatever it was.
However they did it, yeah. And then Alan Arnold transcribed it. And so like...
it was for the purpose of documenting the process and stuff?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so like, I just have to read you this sequence because basically a lot of it is he and Carrie Fisher getting in an argument because she wasn't invited to a kind of script meeting because they saw the freezing of Han as like Harrison Ford's scene, essentially. And Carrie Fisher was quite annoyed that she wasn't invited to that revision where Harrison Ford came up with the "I know" line, for example. And so like tension is really high, and then it says perplexed and harried Kershner struggles on, only to be confronted by Dave Prowse, anxious to promote his newly published physical fitness book. It is not an entirely welcome diversion. Dave Prowse, this is like, he's speaking. Prowse, Kersh, I'm going to change the subject. Completely take your mind all of this. My book is just out. Kersh, brackets, baffled. What book? Prowse, I've written a book called Fitness is Fun, and I want to give you a copy. Kershner, really, brackets, not very convincingly. I would love that. Yeah, it comes out on Saturday. Great, lovely. You actually have time to write a book? Prowse, it took me about 9 months to write. It's about exercising. It's a textbook on weightlifting. You would love it. Kershner, weightlifting. Well, okay, I'll buy one. And then as an aside into the mic, he talks a lot about Kershner playing to the microphone. He says, whoa, boy, is this some scene. It really is some scene. It's just like, what? I tell you what.
Oh, my stomach hurts from laughing.
It's so, yeah. I would never in a million years have guessed that was happening behind the scenes while this film was being made. Anyway.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. I just had to get that out of the way because it is just the most amazing tidbit, and the rest of the book is equally amazing, but like that is easily the funniest and best bit.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't quite mean to go there so quickly.
Deep breath. Wow. Yeah. All right. definitely going to read that book for sure.
Yeah. Well, so it's actually quite hard to find. There was another one that was made for Return of the Jedi that's much more kind of PR controlled. This book is really easy to get a copy of. This was like $5 off the internet. This one, nowhere near as many copies were produced, and I think I had to go on like Abe Books, which is the Amazon-owned
Amazon owns them? I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
I think Amazon owns everything, right? But it was like 80 Australian dollars.
That is, so for those listening, Dan is just holding up like a straight up paperback. It looks just like the Star Wars like EU books, those thick paperbacks.
Yeah.
Nothing special on the outside. But wow.
Although it smells great, like
I love a good
has
book
that
smell.
old book smell, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But there's also the J.W. Rinsler making of book, which
That's
actually
the one I've
quotes
heard
from
of.
this one I have. It's much bigger. For those listening at home, it's like a big, like a coffee table hardback.
That one's easier to find.
Yeah, much easier to find. Although I think still went out of print for a little while. But yeah. And it quotes from the Alan Arnold book quite extensively.
Wow. Okay. I actually didn't know that there were two. I thought that the one you were going to mention was the Rinsler one. So, yeah.
They're both great. Yeah, they're both great.
Good to know. I will be requesting them from my library. I feel like the public needs them as well.
Yes.
So, with that good deed for my week, that hasn't happened yet, that I'm already patting myself on the back for. Let's continue with these minutes. Oh, that lightsaber retraction. That beep. Beep, 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 beep. Do you feel like the line is blurred between that boo and lightsaber?
Yeah. I mean, it's the lights in the tunnel, right, that he's walking through.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't. I was only just listening.
Yeah.
For sure. And yeah, that also reminds me of that shot in in the Rogue One trailer, which wasn't actually used in the movie, of Jyn in a similar tunnel, and she sort of turns to the camera as the lights in the tunnel come on. That's quite interesting. So they talked a lot about during the making of Rogue One as they had this weird process where the director, oh my God, I've totally forgotten his name, Gareth Edwards, would have indie hour, he called it, at the end of every day.
Like Indiana Jones?
No, like indie is in independent, so independent filmmaking style hour, where like at the end of the day after producing all their kind of, heavily planned shots, they would spend an hour just kind of like getting a cool shot.
Oh,
and
that's a cool idea.
Yeah, and like some of those shots actually influenced ideas in the movie and, kind of formed actual visual ideas for the plot, because that was a heavily recut and reshot film too. But that shot in particular was a really beautiful one of Jyn turning around in a tunnel that is very similar to this. I'm sure it must have been inspired by that. Was part of the Indie Hour experiment and isn't in the movie. It's only in the trailer because it looks cool. And like
one of those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same with the similar with the TIE Fighter. That there's a TIE Fighter confrontation in the trailer that's not in the movie as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a long diversion. This is going to be like a 6-hour episode if I keep this up. But that tunnel, it's just, it's a beautiful marriage of production design and audio design, I think, as a lot of the sequences.
The thing that this just occurred to me, also hearing it looks like a giant tanning bed or something.
Yeah.
With all those lights.
Yeah, or like you go through it to get to one of those like sensory deprivation pods.
That's also what I was thinking. Yeah.
Float.
It's a float tank. You know, Luke in this short time, he's exploring some, like, where is he? I mean, obviously he's on Cloud City, but it's like a fun house. It's like, it's all these like things he goes in and ducks under, and it's like the set and the layout is like convoluted and confusing and pretty varied and pretty scary. I mean, it definitely sets a mood of, I don't know where the hell we are at this point in time. Also, I'm spatially very challenged, so I'm like, oh, he's turning left, right, like they keep going to new locations in this place. Yeah.
And the fact that they cut in and out of kind of where he ends up to, I think heightens that for sure. That you know, there are sections where we're not really supposed to have followed. There's a kind of an ellipses, a spatial ellipses between where we've seen him last and where we end up. But it is, I think Funhouse is right. It's kind of almost like a villain's lair, which audiences would have been used to seeing in like the James Bond franchise. Like I think in The Man with the Golden Gun, which was almost a decade before, it was like 72, I think, before Empire. It literally ends in a kind of funhouse, you know, where Bond is stalking the villain and the villain is stalking Bond through like a mirrored funfair type situation. And so, yeah, like it's almost, leaning into that. But it feels like Darth Vader's territory, even though he's just as much of a visitor to Bespin.
It really feels like Darth Vader's territory. I don't think I fully understood the nature to which Vader was also a visitor. As a kid, certainly, I was like, I don't know. I interpreted this as Darth Vader's place. Also, a lot of it does remind me of the Death Star. Just all the big space and all the places to fall down. And I mean, the first time we spoke, we were talking about like the Chasm Crossfire and everything. And there were lots of places to go in and out of and around. And yeah, lots of sounds like this too, like the woo type of stuff.
Absolutely. And no guardrails. As is
Never.
Yeah, which is the thing that the one of the innovations of Andor is they introduced guardrails in the prison sequence, breaking the long held Star Wars design rule.
Cinematically, this whole sequence is, first of all, the colors and it's very misty. It's very foggy, for one. When they're fighting, I'm putting some images up on screen. The colors, the blue and the red, the clash. And then as Luke exits that tunnel, like, okay, this tunnel leads to this next place, which turns out is this place with that big window, which is also very Death Star. It looks like it's more Vader's place than Luke's place for sure. And characters being by windows is always a danger. I mean, I'm kind of afraid of like big windows in real life. I'm always like, could I theoretically fall through that? Knocked. What if I'm clumsy and I just fall through it? What if someone throws a pipe at me?
Using the Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think this sequence visually is, you know, one of the great visual sequences of all of Star Wars, but also kind of really formative in blockbuster filmmaking because the blue and orange or blue and red mist or lighting, you know, that really stark lighting, that is now such a cliche of kind of blockbuster filmmaking. You see that, you know, if you Google blue and red or blue and orange film poster, it'll come up with like literally 100 different film posters that all use that kind of color scheme.
You can even see it if you just watch streamers.
Yeah, exactly. It's the gamer LED look, but it wasn't really so much of a cliche at that point. I think, I mean, actually, funnily, going back to the Alan Arnold book, there's, the other thing that Kersh is complaining about on this set is that there's just way too much smoke everywhere. He can't deal with the smoke machines. But it has a tremendous effect. And, this is kind of going into my greater theory of Empire Strikes Back music. But the thing that is different about Empire is that it was shot, Kersh, much to George Lucas's frustration, didn't use a master for any of the scenes. So by that, what I mean is there's, close-up shots of individual actors playing out a scene, and you can kind of cut between them, right? So if we're doing the I Love You, I Know scene, you will do a close-up of Leia and a close-up of Han, and you might have a couple of reaction shots in there of Boba Fett and Chewie and C-3PO and Darth Vader and stuff like that. But what George Lucas would have done, so he shot the very first Star Wars film, what he called documentary style, which is what he'd done for American Graffiti, which is having actually multiple cameras usually running at once. But one of them shoots a master, which is all of the characters or all of the action of the scene basically within one camera. And so that means that for Lucas, who I think has always seen himself as much more of an editor than a director, like you read any interview with him about filmmaking and he talks about how he loves getting in the editing booth and he hates directing humans and kind of having to struggle to get the shot. But he loves editing, and you can see that particularly with like his student films. But I wrote this article for a website called Senses of Cinema about George Lucas as a director, which is kind of where a lot of this is coming in. But he thinks of the way that he makes his films is in the editing suite, and this is kind of why after Star Wars he didn't direct a film until The Phantom Menace between 1977 and 99. But Lucasfilm produced a lot of movies, and he kind of talks about openly not being credited as an editor on a lot of these movies, but taking the work of, like, say, Ron Howard on Willow and doing, like, the second cut of that film and, like, kind of turning a director's on the set vision into film, I guess, in editing. And his wife at the time, Marsha Lucas, was a really celebrated editor as well. She worked on the first Star Wars film. But, sorry, this is a very long way of saying that with The Empire Strikes Back, Lucas was really frustrated with Kersh because Kersh did not shoot a master take of any of his scenes. He only shoots where he's interested in. So and you can see in the making of, you can see he talks about, and then we'll cut to Leia's face in this reaction shot, and then we'll cut to Harrison Ford. That is a very particular way of filmmaking where he's almost editing the film as he's shooting it, which is a very different way of making things. And so that kind of almost removes the power from Lucas as the editor, and he made very certain when he hired for Richard Marquand for Return of the Jedi that, Marquand was a TV director and very used to working within house style. That's a whole nother thing. We can come back to that.
Interesting.
When you do the Jedi thing. I have an unpublished journal article which I need to publish someday about Richard Marquand because I think he's this total, fascinating question mark.
You should definitely do that by the time I'm on Return of the Jedi season. That your article should be out.
Okay, all right, I'll aim for that. Anyway, to go back to my point is that where I think Empire is an editor's film, though, is that it amplifies what. Sorry, the reason that I bring this up before I move on to that point is that is why the film is so beautiful, is because Kersh managed to focus on visually what he wanted from every shot. I think, rather than thinking this will be produced in editing, the effect of this, the fear of this scene will be created in editing is like, no, the fear of this will be created in camera, in the camera shot. But the reason why I think when Empire becomes an editor's film is in this cross narrative storytelling, which Lucas did so much of in American Graffiti. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's like 3 or 4 parallel stories that kind of cut in between each other for the duration of the film. But particularly then in Star Wars, when they're on the Death Star, cutting between Obi-Wan and the exploits of Han and Chewie, and then later Luke and Leia break off, and there's sort of 3 storylines going at once, and they all come together really for the finale. But Empire is, for almost all of its runtime, largely 2 stories that intersect, but are told alongside each other. And so what I think, and this is my theory for the soundtrack and why it's so great, is because so much of the music is meanwhile. Like, that's what it's doing. It's like, meanwhile on Dagobah, meanwhile on Cloud City, meanwhile Luke, meanwhile the carbon freeze, like it's sort of, and that's why, I was thinking a lot of this while listening to the Battle on the Ice Q discussion, that's so much of what the music does there as well, is that it's kind of like, here's the rebels' point of view, and now we're cutting to the Imperials, and so here's the march, the Imperial March, but it's kind of over the top of this rebel anxious ostinato, but there's the kind of certainty of the Imperial March over the top of that, and so you're getting this kind of like, here's what's happening, but meanwhile don't forget about what's happening with the other people that we're just going to cut back to in a few moments' time. And I think that's kind of what makes this score so good, is that it's continually kind of working to tell a number of different storylines musically, to the degree where, sorry, I realize I'm now monologuing, but I think that what I love about this cue so much is that it brings together a few different strands of music together in the one sequence, particularly with what we're about to hear, where you get this kind of, people talk about the visual regime of Star Wars as being like the rebels are like hectic hexagons and uncertain shapes, and in the design of their spaceships, right? The Millennium Falcon's like a hamburger with 2 triangles, right? Whereas the Imperials have got the a Star Destroyer is basically a single triangle. The Death Star's a circle. They've got these very clear singular shapes, and I think this is what happens with the music, is that in Empire, the Imperial March, like every time it's played, it's these very, the downbeat is emphasized, dun, 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 right? Whereas like you get these rebellion, anxious, kind of creative, or feel, sort of feeling a bit improvised, like kind of like these rhythms that are like dotted, as I think you said in a previous episode, or like, tied across bars, like, or in really strange,
like ad hoc
time signatures. Yeah, ad hoc. Yeah. And I think that's how this soundtrack works. Yeah, I may have thought about this too much. I've thought to myself, like, those, do you know those 33 and a third book series? I would really like to write one about The Empire Strikes Back. So if there's an editor out there listening,
Ooh.
but like that's what I would say about this whole soundtrack, is that it is this kind of combination of, and because it's a chase movie, right, is that the presence of that really definite singular Imperial March and Imperial music, which is all about kind of rhythm and order, like even those kind of that wound up like dum bum ba da 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 dum kind of rhythm. It's like it's trying to the music is trying to catch the off-kilter music of the rebels and impose order on it. I think that's basically the musical point of this soundtrack. And you kind of see that come together a bit in this cue.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think I forgot exactly how you said it, but the darting back and forth, the meanwhile thing. Well, first of all, I don't know if Australians use the word meanwhile differently or just more. It took me a while to catch on to what you were talking about. Like the music is meanwhile. Like the music is constantly it's the referee for one. It's like keeping tabs on things. It is like holding things together and reminding us of things that happened before. And the strictness of the imperial motifs, even the incidental motifs, even just like the material in general. It is, I mean, there's a power in the strictness. I mean, it sounds like, it sounds undoubtedly powerful and cohesive and everything, but it does, if the rebels are just darting all over the place, it is kind of going to be hard to catch them, even if they are less organized. Or some might always slip away. And I think musically we hear the rebels slipping away quite a bit. Yeah, okay, I'm excited to dig in to more of this now. We haven't even gotten to music yet.
No, I know. I kind of was like, this is really going to slow us down. But I was also like, I can't really explain how I think about how Kershner got such beauty in The Empire Strikes Back without kind of talking about, the director's film, the editor's film, and then the composer's film, and how all of those kind of things link together in a really interesting way in this movie.
Oh no, I think that's a great way. I think that's a great thing to put out there. And now I'm really thinking about like, okay, let me just rewind. Have you seen the movie Tar?
Not yet, no.
Okay, well, this isn't a spoiler or anything. It's just the actors have talked about receiving the script, or at least Cate Blanchett talks about receiving the script, and basically like all of the shots like were in there, like how they are in the movie, like how it's edited in the movie, it was in the script, like close up on this. So that reminds me of what you were saying of like something being an editor's movie. And I mean, I'm not experienced enough in filmmaking to know how rare that is or how common that is, because I know scripts do say that kind of stuff, but I just imagine that a lot of that changes in the editing room. But like,
yeah. And on the day as well, like, I mean, especially back in the day, like you might, a director might turn up to set and go, oh, actually, let's film this character from here, because like the light on the set is just hitting in this really, really great way. We'll take advantage of that. But there are, I would say increasingly like blockbusters are like heavily previs, so like pre-visualized. So like in the case of Marvel, like the action scenes are basically made and directed a lot of the time before the film is made. Like they'll like, yeah, like, before the actual production and the film has been made, they've had an animatic of this fight sequence that's been done, for like a couple of years. And that's because, I think they view a very particular house style for action sequences, for that particular type of movie making. Not always, but like, yeah. So like, yeah, previs is kind of the next step up from storyboarding, which is what would have happened for a film like Empire, where you kind of sketch things out almost like a comic book. But yeah, back then, and like, yeah, I still think today, like there's still like latitude, particularly outside the, film that costs $300 million to make. There's latitude for a director to go, hey, what if we just put the camera there? Or the cinematographer, similarly. So, yeah, but to have a script that's like medium long shot, Cate Blanchett, stage left, like, yeah, I don't think that's particularly usual. Yeah.
The other film that I heard was like that was Everything Everywhere All at Once. Okay, there was an actors on actor interview with Kate Blanchett and Michelle Yeoh. I actually don't know how to say her name. Yeoh.
Yeah.
And they were talking to each other, and yeah, she was saying like in the script, like in that movie, there's lots of really quick shots where she's just like doing a quick pose and going through different multiverses or whatever. And yeah, that was all in the script, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. But both of them are good movies, so
yeah.
maybe there's
and like
yeah.
And at the other end of the spectrum, you have something like the French New Wave in the '60s, not too long before Empire Strikes Back, where in the late '60s, where they were just literally going out into the street and like going, I don't know what's going to happen. Like we'll just put the camera there. We don't have a permit to film in the street. We'll just I don't know. We'll see what happens. And there are still some movies that are made like that today, not high budget ones usually, but yeah. different spectrums.
Yeah, I'm thinking of which one I'm more like, at least with making music, and I don't know. I think I'm both. I think I'm the George Lucas version when I'm not ready to think. Like the thoughts haven't crystallized well. I don't know. I think I'd be more of a George Lucas. I think I'd wish that I weren't, because it's so hectic to have to wait to the end to like. I'd want to be someone like who could have all the shots planned out, but I just know new ideas always strike when material starts being filmed or being recorded. So I don't know. But anyway, yeah.
I think for Lucas, it's also that editing is a much less socially involved task.
Yeah. I
like
relate to.
Yeah, like you can just sit in a room at 2 a.m. and cut film. I think that's the type of filmmaking that he really enjoys.
And the writing, or if not the writing, the creating the world, the creating the story.
Creating the worlds, yeah. He finds writing, like script writing itself, very difficult. But, but creating the story, yeah, for sure. Like being in front of like 80 people on set, having to literally call the shots, like I don't think he likes that at all.
Yeah. I don't like conducting like sessions, like recording sessions. Or I don't like that at all. I really desperately don't like it. Or conducting rehearsal. Ugh, no. But I'd rather write the music. And yeah, I probably would rather edit the music or at least be in the mixing booth with someone or whatever. Anyway, okay, cool. We have a lot of setup. Let me continue playing. Okay, the cue has started. Wait. Now it has started. It's very soft. Okay, I'm going to try to have the bots not pick me up, so let me just put that down for a second. Already, the way that cue starts, by the way, which is 11M1 through the window, it starts very softly. It creeps in there with the strings and the celeste, just really, really high up, and then we get the dark side motif, the do, 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 which also reminds me of Duel of the Fates.
Which is, I will happily admit that it wasn't until listening to this season that I realized that's a motif. That's the natural dark side motif. I was just like, yeah, like they're kind of notes that
happen a
lot. Like I just not consciously thought of it before. Which is amazing because like once it's pointed out, I'm like, oh yeah, obviously.
Right, obviously.
Yeah, but I do love, that very first. Firstly, I should say the big, we've got the string cluster chords. There's also what I thought was a celeste, but I think is maybe electric piano from live performances of this score, doing like a right at the start. Which you probably don't hear in the film version at all.
Well, let's listen to the Yeah, let's listen to the not film version. The Clash of the Lightsabers. So the cue is called Through the Window, but the track on the soundtrack is called Clash of the Lightsabers. So... Oh. Dee-dee, dee-dee.
Which is cool, but also, like, that's a tuba, I'm pretty sure, doing a really high...
What?
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. I don't think that's French horn. I think that's a tuba. And I also...
amazing.
I think I said this in the Art of the Score Empire episode where we didn't get to go in anywhere near as beautiful depth as this whole season. But I think this is one of the great film scores for tuba. Like, tuba really gets some fantastic parts all through this movie. And yeah, that's just another lovely little touch where it feels quite strained because it's so high, right? It feels like this weird kind of semi-unidentifiable sound.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Sort of like the really, really, in a different way, the really, really high bassoon that starts the Rite of Spring.
Yeah. Well, yeah, The Rite of Spring is literally my favorite piece of music ever written. So, you know,
it's amazing.
just bringing out the full Dan hits here.
I think it's like the number one piece of music that composers cite they wish that they had written.
Yeah.
I've heard it mentioned in so many composer interviews. It's like, I wish I wrote that piece.
Well, I think as well, like, it had a really big influence on film scoring, not just its tone and, angriness and all the little bits that have been kind of sampled and they ostinati and stuff like that. But it's written as a lot of Shostakovich music was. Stravinsky. It's the afternoon here. Like, I don't even have a morning excuse. It's written, and this is similar to Debussy. And when I worked on Untitled Goose Game, which used Debussy's music, we realized that his music is really broken up into very short sections. And I think the same is true for The Rite of Spring, where, like, there are almost like little modular couple of bar fragments that you could kind of pick up and rearrange fairly easily, which in game music for Debussy was very helpful. But I think for film music, like, it's similar. And, like, you kind of see with Empire Strikes Back, like, you know, there's a little fragment here for the Rebels, a little fragment, you know, with that cross-cutting that I was talking about. And so, yeah, like, another Stravinsky impact.
For sure. I forgot what I was... Oh, that's right. Someone recently asked me, or I don't know, we were talking about Untitled Goose Game and then made the connection of, like, wait, do you know the person who did the music? And I was like, it's Dan Golding. And I was talking to a Star Wars Music Minute guest and listener who obviously knows who you are. I think it was just like a moment of, like, what?
Yeah.
These converging worlds.
Where's my head? There, yeah, whoops. For anybody watching at home, you can see I'm trying to awkwardly point in the mirror here. The vinyl for Goose Game in the background.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And also the vinyl. This was not intentional. I promise it was out already, but the vinyl for the Gerhardt
Empire Strikes
vinyl
Back.
of Sweets. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's an amazing album. Yeah. And if you've watched previous Frank Lehman episodes, he has had that in the background too.
No, he has the
poster.
Close Encounters.
Oh, he has the clown. Oh, that's what he has. Okay.
Yeah, which was very funny. Again, totally coincidental. I've had that there for like 6 months.
That's funny.
I think. Yeah.
So I have I have a little bit. I have something that I'm hearing here that I am going to run by you. After the Dark Side motif, when the Imperial March theme comes in, which is like in a second. By the way, I'm not convinced it's an electric piano, but I'm not convinced it's a celeste either. It doesn't have enough reverb.
It's something like that.
It doesn't have enough reverb to be a celeste, I feel. Okay, here. Oh my gosh. Like the theme is great, like but all the stuff happening under it is just
I know.
like, oh my gosh. It's
Yeah.
wild.
That's easy for you to whip out your violin and just like,
Totally.
like,
So easy.
It's yeah.
And the like rattling, the sort of percussive rattles, it reminds me of a part earlier in the movie, actually. It reminds me of when we are on Hoth and Luke is in the Wampa's cave and he's upside down and he's like trying to reach out to the Force to grab his lightsaber. It especially, the part that comes after this in Through the Window reminds me of it even more because instead of the sort of jagged separate bows, it's more slurred. But that sort of like theme on top with just racing strings. Yeah, I'll play examples in a second, but what were you going to say about it?
Oh, I don't know, so much. I mean, that what you're talking about now is what my Art of the Score colleague, co-host Andrew talks about as being the Force buzz,
Totally.
which resurfaces in the Force Awakens in particular. Like when Kylo Ren freezes characters, there's the strings just going.
Yes.
This kind of hectic buzzing effect.
Yes.
I do also. I don't know. Maybe we should continue talking about this, but I do want to say something else about that little entry before we move on. But let's. You have your violin. I'm keen to see.
Well, I'm gonna play. Well, it's the way that it. Well, let's see. Oh, I turned the volume down. Oops. Okay. Like you can't clearly hear their pitches. You can vaguely pick out a few of them, but the strings are actually they're kind of stacked they're stacked in an interesting way where they are basically playing the same shape, which is like I don't know, it goes down first. I don't know what the exact notes are. Nope. But it's like it's so fast and it sounds like their bows are separate. Like it doesn't sound slurred. It sounds like, but they're starting on different notes. So it's not like they're not in unison. They're just kind of playing, starting on different notes. And in earlier in the film, it's a sort of a similar thing where the different voices are just kind of playing. You can kind of hear the pitches, but it's clearly not that important. But it's not important but it's not that important. At least the timing is not that important. It's just as fast as possible. Is what it sounds like.
I think so as well. Like I would love to have a physical copy of the score, but I would imagine that isn't like completely notated out as like you must hit this note at this particular point in time. It's like here's your kind of, here's your array of notes and like give it a whirl, like start in this period. And like I don't think there would be an expectation from the conductor that every violin is like hitting the same note at the same time, right? I think it's that kind of chaos that actually makes this come through.
I think you might be hitting the beats at the same time, or you might be hitting the downbeats at the same time, but
yeah,
you might all those middle notes you might be a little bit off.
Yeah, for sure. And so what? Yeah, I mean, so to me, I think there's definitely like the strings of the Force, to some degree, but I think as well it's kind of the strings are Luke's panic. I think, as well. And definitely when they open up, in a few moments when the window is smashed and they become much more kind of, not quite Mickey Mousing, but they're a little bit the sound of the wind, I think, with the more sweeping. I think that, yeah, it's kind of almost like this is what Luke is hearing. We're feeling his emotional turmoil, because I think that's why it's so effective that the rest of the fight has so far been unscored. That we're really not sure like who's got the upper hand, and like there's that bit where like, you know, Luke kicks Vader off the ledge and like we think, wow, like maybe he's going to be okay. And then it's kind of like this musical sequence and going back to that beginning with the brass after the tuba does the dark side motif, that kind of dum dum dum, and then it goes down again, boom, like our tonal center shifts down, so we're kind of like slowing down and going down, and sort of like we're moving into Vader's key almost, right, from this moment of suspense where it's I don't mean Vader's key, because I think this is like B. It's different to what the Imperial March is usually played in, so I don't mean in that sense, but it's kind of like we're moving down a few home steps to be at home with Vader, if that makes, you know, musically at home with Vader, and it's kind of like the music is saying, oh, you wanted to see what Vader trying is like? Like, here it is. Like, strap yourself in, because you are not going to win this battle. Sorry, Luke. Like, you had a few nice moments when Vader was not taking you seriously, and now, like, he's not even going to fight you properly. He's just going to throw stuff at you because you're kind of that insignificant. There's that much of a mismatch scenario. And I think the music, you know, goes back to what I was saying before about the kind of definiteness of the Imperial March, is that it's like, yeah, this chaos of strings underneath, and then the Imperial March over the top, especially with those yabba-dum.
Yeah.
It's like
That sounds like the sword is just going like.
Yeah. But it's like it's that elite swords master level,
Totally.
right?
It's very elite sounding.
Yeah. It's like I am expending the minimum amount of effort to defeat you. Like I'm not like breaking a sweat here. I'm you know.
It's one of the striking things about this scene. It's one of the terrifying things about this scene is how Vader looks when he's like.
Yeah.
He's just like, God, he looks so, I mean, we can't see his face, but he's barely moving. He's just making all these objects. He's not even like doing a dramatic hand gesture. He's just basically standing there. It's so, I got a screenshot of, I don't know what I'm talking about, where it almost looks like he's surrendering, but like he's just he has his lights, like, I don't know, I caught a shot of him with his lightsaber in front of his face, reminiscent of Ben, when Ben is about to sacrifice himself, let Vader cut him down. But no, Vader is, this is child's play.
Exactly. And like, especially the way that he enters the scene, like we see Luke from his point of view, like we get an over the shoulder shot of Vader entering the scene, and that's the first time we see him, and that's when that boom, bum, bum chords come in. It's almost a little bit horror-esque, like slasher type thing, in that we suddenly switch to see the world from this all-powerful character's point of view, and Luke is just his victim, you know, in the same way as Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween would be Michael Myers or something like that, right? Like we suddenly see just how powerful this character is, I think, by kind of almost, because the rest of the fight, I think, has largely been from Luke's perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although there are lots of wide shots that cover them both, which is nice. I mean, and is just cinematically very beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep playing before I do the comparison to the Wampa's Lair, because the force rattle strings does change a little bit as we continue. I guess we're gonna hear it again. So overall, it sounds like they're rising, but not. So that was the elite swordsman.
Yeah.
Now here, we have a different flavor of that. And the harp has joined in. The harp is going.
Like that's the kind of thing you learn to play the harp to be able to do, right?
Exactly. I've been waiting for the 100%. It's crawling. The strings are. So the strings in that point, I have a little transcription.
Amazing.
It's 8 VA, so it's going to be an octave higher than this. But you can see that they are basically. Well, okay, wait. For those who don't read music, the top line, the first violins are basically going B, C sharp. And the second violins are doing basically the same thing, but starting on a different note. And basically when they play together, they are clashing. They are, but there's not like, it's not like they're 100% parallel. It's not like they're always a whole step apart. It's just basically, they are just meant to be just not exactly on the same note. So it's like this. You know, it's like a vertical, it's like a cluster unfolding horizontally or something. And it's very, again, it's like the notes don't seem that important, but like the feeling of the rubbing up against each other is part of it. They could have just been doubled and they could have just been unison, but they're not. And here they're slurred rather than separated. So now I'm just going to play from the Wampa's Lair. All right. Let's see. Okay, I'm starting at about 110. So that's Luke trying to get his lightsaber. And the comparison that I made at that time when recording that episode it reminds me of the Moldau, the Smetana piece, where the strings or the winds are just kind of like, I don't know, it sounds like a river, a flowing river. And again, it kind of works also here because of the wind. It feels like the onomatopoeic representation of wind.
But it's also, I think it's also telling us about height and falling. Like it reminds me, I think, while you were speaking, I have like a standing desk, and I like, because my keyboard's underneath here, so like if anybody's like now noticing that I've got a different camera framing, that's because the computer is now higher. I didn't think I was going to play, but like, oh man, what is it? In Vertigo, now I'm not going to, yeah. It's like, you know, like at the start of Vertigo by Herman, it's got these two that I've not played the right notes. It's been a while since I played that. That is kind of irritating. But
Wait, did you already play it?
was it not coming through?
No. I thought you were...
Nothing?
Oh, no, nothing's
That's
coming
fine.
through.
That's fine. It's probably better for the listeners of this podcast that I don't play piano anyway. Maybe I'll drop my my screen back down again. But basically, Vertigo by Bernard Herrmann has these two like contrary arpeggios. So like one goes da 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 na 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 na, and the other one goes da na 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 na, and they play at the same time. And in
like
Vertigo,
a major arpeggio?
It's like it's no, it's not major. It's like the Herman Hitchcock chord, which is like the diminished whatever it is, the diminished seventh that he loved so much.
Like that? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, and like it changes, the top note changes between a minor seventh, major seventh, and an octave. Anyway, the point is that in Vertigo, there's the very famous smash zoom where Scotty who suffers from vertigo, looks down and sees the world kind of spinning, which has been incorporated in like millions of subsequent movies. Like there's a smash zoom shot in Jaws, and the way they achieve that effect is by moving the camera in while zooming out at the same time. So it changes basically the planes of perspective. Mm-hmm. So like you're changing the zoom of the lens while moving the camera to kind of almost retain the same field of vision, which creates this really, really strange kind of perspective shift. So it's like two planes of motion of the camera and the lens moving against each other, and two planes of motion in the music doing the same.
Oh, that's
this kind of
really
creating
cool.
This. Yeah. It is really cool. This is another journal article I wrote, which nobody has read, and that's totally fine. But
where
like,
are all these published, Dan?
I'll send you a link.
Okay.
But like that. I think that's what this music is doing. Is like it. While it doesn't have the two planes of contrary motion like you do in Vertigo, I think, and we spoke about this, I think, the very first time I was on this podcast, is that Bernard Herrmann was something of a mentor figure to John Williams. It's giving this atmosphere of height, I think, and a sense of musical vertigo, like, careful, you're going to fall because the strings are up so high that they're probably going to fall as well.
That hits close to home. That's a really good point. Well, okay, let's listen. Well, okay, in the Wampa's Lair, I will say one difference is that there's so much rising and falling, which kind of, in that case, seems to, at least for me, symbolize like Luke's welling up of force. We even have that like instrument, the notchola, the synth or whatever.
It's the up, right?
Right. Like it definitely keeps rising, like the Moldau. It's like you're trying to get the meter to go higher and you're just like squeezing harder and you're like, okay, just rise.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's what Yoda and it's like what Yoda and the Force, that cue, or Yoda lifts the ship, is kind of doing too. It's like keeps kind of rising a little bit until the ship is raised. But okay, so back to these minutes. When that comes in, it is, let's see. Okay, I have all these timestamps in my notes of like, okay, 1:40, 1:10 of the Clash of the Lightsabers. Okay, yeah, that's what we're doing right now. Let's coming up in a second. So yeah, Luke is up really high. There's no bass notes, right? It's like he's up without without ground to stand on, and it sounds like it. And there's literally no bass involved. Yeah.
I really love that little clarinet. I think maybe it's like an E flat clarinet. I'm not sure. At the end there, it's just like doesn't sound related key wise to anything that's going on. It's like we'll just shove in this for an extra bit of chaos. But I also like it comes back to like a little while ago you were talking about what instrument Luke is, and I was like, I feel like he's the clarinet, and like I feel like this is Luke's like little chaos clarinet. Because it's such a neutral instrument, which Luke as a character is the everyman that we're supposed to read heroism into, I suppose. But anyway, that is yet another digression. But yeah, like I really like how this sequence kind of like traces out Vader's theme, like the bum 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 bum. Just reminding you like who's boss as we
totally.
fall. Yeah.
Yeah, and at that one point when it's like boom, it sounds like someone with a big boot just like stamping on your hand.
Yeah. Exactly. And like I when I watched Empire Strikes Back as a kid, I distinctly remember watching this scene and thinking like, is that it? Like, is Luke dead? Like, and then the next shot is like he's climbing back up, and I'm like, oh, okay, phew. Like,
Wow.
I should say as well, like I had an unintentionally strange relationship with this movie originally, in that I saw the first Star Wars kind of accidentally from watching it over my brother's shoulder. And then like Star Wars became a huge part of my life. This is prequels. This is the dark times, as people talk about it, where there was only like EU books. Then I was like, oh, I've got to see what happens next. And so I went to the supermarket to buy the VHS with my pocket money. And I picked, I was like, I don't want to see some middle installment. Like,
did you skip to the end?
I'll just get the final film. So I bought what I thought was episode 6, and I bought The Empire Strikes Back instead.
Okay, good.
Like thinking,
good.
but like it was purely accidental. I was like, this is like 10-year-old me going like, yeah, I'm gonna buy the conclusion, like, and like I remember like watching this sequence and sort of slowly going like, I don't think this is the end of the trilogy. Like, this does not seem like a conclusion to me. I don't think we're going to be able to rescue Han. And then the funniest thing is that I didn't see Return of the Jedi for like 3 years because I'd like run out of pocket money. And like, so I like read the novelization from my local library before I actually saw the film. Yeah, this is, for anyone younger listening, these are the strange ways that we encountered movies before the era of Netflix and streaming on demand and Disney Plus and all that kind of stuff. Like, it was just completely haphazard.
Okay, I have many follow-up questions. Okay, I get it. You didn't have enough pocket money for 3 years, which is dubious.
Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe I don't know. Why didn't I buy it?
But like, also, did your brother, who was originally the one watching it, did he have it?
Well, we have a split family, and he lived with his dad. So he didn't really enable, but I only remember him kind of enabling the encounter with Star Wars. I think I very quickly became like much more of a Star Wars fan than him. Like, it's not like he's not a fan, but like Star Wars became my identity as like a 10-year-old. So
yeah, that happened to me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's something that we have to hear, well, really quick. I mean, by we have to hear, I mean, I think we need to hear it. pass it? Oh my God. There's an ah. There's a scream. There. Did you hear that?
Yep.
Ah.
Yep.
Where was that coming from?
It's Luke. I think it's Luke, but I wonder if that's actually Mark Hamill or whether it's been added in by Ben Burtt or something.
It doesn't sound like him. It sounds clearly like ADR for sure, but also, yeah, it's one of those funny ones. And there are a few of those sounds here and there. Yeah.
I have this discussion with my students. I'm every year in the first semester of teaching. I'm very lucky to run a whole 12-week subject on film sound, and like I have these discussions with my students about like what would likely to have been recorded, like with a field recordist versus what's ADR and Foley and stuff like that. And I reckon this whole sequence is probably a pretty good example. The fight, that is. Before we get to the dialogue, I think it's probably a pretty good example of something that was they probably put the microphones away for a lot of this. I imagine, like, why would you bother recording sticks clacking on each other and there's no dialogue? I don't know. Why would you even have a sound recordist present for a lot of this? So I imagine pretty much all of the sound that we hear that we're hearing right now has been assembled in post-production.
I think that's probably true. Plus, just Vader in general.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it was still recorded anyway, just so you could sync up the clacks with the.
Yeah, might have been. That's true. Yeah.
But then I don't know how.
Like a reference.
I don't think they were putting it on a computer and seeing where the waveforms were. So.
No.
How would they?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were just really good at syncing stuff. They probably were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow movies were made before.
I mean, the other side of that equation is that, of course, you've got to rotoscope the lightsabers in. So if you're rotoscoping the flash of the moment where the lightsabers hit each other, like you might as well, like you build it around the flash that you're rotoscoping in rather than anything that was recorded on set, I imagine.
Wow, that's amazing. They rotoscoped the flashes in.
Yeah, well, I mean, how else would they have done it back then?
I don't even.
I think it's just sticks.
I don't even know. Wow. Yeah, of course. I take it for granted. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. No, I mean, like it's so markedly different these days with the sequel trilogy in particular, you know, like those beautiful lightsabers that they made to film with that are capable of kind of providing on-set lighting, which is why they look so different. Yeah. But yeah, back at this point, yeah, I don't know.
Wow. All right, so we are continuing with skipping to Luke in the reactor with all the wind sound, and I will read a little bit from Ben Burtt interviews about making wind sounds. He doesn't specifically say like this specific thing, but there's a lot of wind sound. Again, there's also a lot of wind sound on Hoth. So Cloud City sounds a little bit like the winds on Hoth. And what Ben Burtt says about wind is, you most often get the proper sound by recording something that is not the actual literal device in question. Sometimes even just running a pencil through a piece of rough canvas and remiking it closely gives you a beautiful sound of wind. So, yeah, I don't know. I can't really imagine. Yeah, I guess a canvas. Yeah, it would be kind of scratchy sounding. And then he says the ambiance in the central air passage was produced with this old mechanical wind-making machine. It's a device which had an electric motor, and you could put little different rings into the little donut-shaped kind of washers into it, and it would spin like a musical instrument. The air passing over these little washers would make a windy sound. Wow. I'm just trying to imagine that, like the washers, electric motor, it would spin. I can't even really fathom. I can't put that picture together in my head, but maybe some people can.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing though. I mean, yeah, like so much of my understanding of Foley is that, yeah, it's like it's not really ever what you'd really expect it to be, apart from things like, footsteps, which are apparently the hardest thing really to Foley, because you have to walk in place while while getting the sound of walking forwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was very lucky enough to, when I was doing some work for the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, over here I went to their old Foley studio in the Ultimo in Sydney, where they have their office, which was used like mostly for radio plays, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And like, it's so cool. They have like a little gantry in the room, and to get up there, the steps are regular steps, but they're not. On one side, they're wooden steps, and on the other side, they're metal steps. So, like, depending on what sound you need to record, like, you can walk up either side.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and they've got, like, doors in there to slam, car doors, gates, like, all this really cool stuff. Of course, like, you don't really need a lot of that these days because you've got so much, sound libraries and stuff like that. But so cool to see how it all used to be done.
Yeah. We did the Foley booth at the Australian Center
Oh, yeah.
for the Moving Image.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah. Dan and I went into this little interactive booth. It's a very cool museum or gallery or whatever, and all about the moving image. So they had a little Foley thing, and you could record. I don't know. There was like a camera in there, and it would record you, and you could download what your little film looked like, what you looked like doing it. It was really hard. Yeah.
That was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great.
And the footsteps were a mess. You're trying to sync up. You're trying to like hit the shoe when you see it on screen. Yeah. All right. So continue. This sounds horrifying. So there's your E-flat clarinet.
Yep.
The thing that happens before that is it's a very sort of familiar, not the notes exactly, but the shape of it is a very familiar Williams gesture, the sort of type of thing, where I don't know if it's like a palate cleanser, it's a transitional thing, just like a stinger. I know it's related to, let me try to find what notes they are. It's related to what Frank Lehman calls the pseudo-Uranus motif. And then also I feel like this one might be chromatic knell. Are you familiar?
Only in the sense that I yesterday looked at this section in Frank's catalogue. I must admit that before doing that, no, I was not familiar.
I mean, it's one of the many incidental motifs. It's not one of the main leitmotifs, but I'm going to put an image on screen of how chromatic knell spelled with a K, looks in the catalog, where it's basically quarter notes, so kind of long notes. And I feel like, I bet anyone listening is familiar, or it's vaguely familiar to have something kind of go down and then land on a low note and move to the next thing. And that's what happens here. Now that I brought it up, I'll bring up the pseudo-Uranus motif, which is, it's similar. That's the pseudo-Uranus motif, and it's long notes that kind of go down first, then go a little bit up, and then land on the lowest note. And of course, Uranus is another reference to Gustav Holst's The Planets. There is a Uranus movement, and it opens like that, and has that throughout. But yeah, I think that's what we're hearing. the chromatic knell at least. But it's not the exact same notes, but the fact that it's in Frank's catalog twice as sort of a similar thing, it kind of just shows me that it's a common John Williams thing that he does. So,
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, like it's like a kind of, especially the way where it's used much more clearly, is very much is transitional, as you said before. It's like the end of one scene and the beginning of another, but it's like a certain kind of unpleasant certainty. I think it's like a full stop on the end of a unpleasant sentence.
it is not pleasant. Yeah, that's correct. Let's hear it one more time. So yeah. And we're transitioning. And now we are still in Cloud City, still on Cloud City, but back to where Lando and Leia, etc. are. Mm-hmm. Those cello bass, eighth notes.
Oh yeah. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, it's exactly. And I mean, like I think this really kicks off. I mean, one of the best finales I think that Williams has written, where it just feels like really from this point onwards there is so much momentum, slightly paused for the I Am Your Father revelation in the next set of minutes. But so much momentum and like all of these different themes and ideas kind of dart across the top of this momentum. But it's always there and always building. Like I kind of compare this to, the finale of E.T., where it's really just this kind of, John Williams's music is setting the tempo, I think, of this whole sequence, and like telling us a little bit here and there, but mostly just kind of reinforcing stress and emotion and musically highlighting the fact that this is a finale. I think musically to some degree we can feel like I did as a kid and go, hold on, actually, I don't think this is going to be resolved in this movie. We're not like setting ourselves up for like another half an hour where we go and free Han and Luke defeats Vader. Actually, like this is the finale of the movie, and the music is telling us to expect it to be the finale. I think.
Yeah, there's a certain. What do you think makes it feel that way? Do you think it's just the way it's so big and relatively uninterrupted? Like, is that? Yeah,
like I mean, I think there's like 6 lines of dialogue over this ostinato. It's mostly just the orchestra and the images, and that ostinato, which goes through a few different transitions, tells us so much about the emotion and what to expect from him. But I think probably as well that huge pedal and resolve is really cluing us in emotionally as to this is the big release of the movie rather than anything that we might have coming up, I think. Yeah.
Which pedal are you referring to? The one that comes later?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
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 Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
Soon though.
Yeah, I know what
and
you're
then
talking about.
all over the top, we get Yoda's theme.
Yeah, which I love this fact. I love that this happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so above sorry, which is what the cello bass are playing, we have...
Security code has been changed.
Atu, you can tell the computer whether I'm security. Atu, hey.
Attention, this is Lando Calrissian. Attention, the Empire's taking control of the city. I advise everyone.
And now we're transitioning to the Cloud City theme. But this is one of those, like, you don't expect to hear Yoda's theme here situations.
And it's played in a Canon as well. It's not like it's just kind of snuck in. It's like two versions on top of each other because the cello's kind of following up like half a bar behind, I think.
Yeah. The violas. I think.
Dun-dum, bum, ba-dum. Yeah, and like also like kind of interesting instrumentation because this is like a muted trumpet maybe or muted trombone or French horn or something.
It sounds
muted
like
brass with like cor anglais or oboe or some winds, I reckon, creating that kind of strained sound.
What do you mean by strained? Well, let's hear it again without without the sound effects. I'm just kind of guessing here. Oh, perfect time. Perfect. The strings are. So yeah, I hear it now. I hear it better. The violas are kind of echoing the theme a little bit in tremolo, but the strainedness. Are they doubling or are you just
doubling? Yeah, so it's like it's muted brass with something, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of like gives it a slightly boxed in feeling. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a
But
nasal.
it reminds me of nasal. Yeah, it reminds me of the Battle of Yavin when Luke is really under pressure, and they kind of play a few versions of his theme with muted brass, and it sounds like I remember back on Art of the Score talking about that kind of like auditory matching the visuals of like the theme now being compressed, because he's got no space to maneuver. And like in the same, not to the same degree, but that orchestration kind of gives me that same feeling with Yoda's theme there, where it's like it's not like a victorious performance of it. It's quite a stressed little moment, and I don't know. You could probably make some justification as to why Yoda's theme, because, he kind of said, hey, Luke, if you go to Cloud City, things aren't going to turn out well. Like, and maybe this is the
Yoda's
things aren't
watching.
turning out well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But like, also it's just a nice little melody. And like, I don't know, if you played like Han Solo and the Princess in there, at this point, it wouldn't quite fit as well, and then you wouldn't get the beautiful payoff that we're coming to. Like, I don't know, what other theme would you put in there? The Rebel fanfare, maybe? Doesn't really work in the same way. So, like, it's just kind of like we need something. And as we discussed last time on the Solo episode? Yeah, Solo. Like, not everything needs to be thematically consistent, because then you're just making a jigsaw puzzle rather than an emotional piece of work.
Yes, that's true. So I feel like I'm usually I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist here, but I feel like John Williams didn't have to put it in a theme at all there. He could have made up new music if he wanted to. So again, John Williams isn't the sole person who makes these decisions. It could have been a director choice. It could have been, something discussed in the spotting session. I don't know. But Yoda's theme is like a pretty specific choice to make to put there.
Yeah.
But with regard to like which one, what else, if he were going to put a theme in there, what else would work? I mean, here I have a little screenshot from Frank Lehman's catalog, and just looking at Han and Leia's theme versus Yoda's theme, one thing that does stand out that is a point in Yoda's theme's favor is that rhythmically it is simpler. Rhythmically, you can fit it into a box more easily. Like it's quarter note, half note, quarter, whole note. Like it at least the A section, which is what we're hearing here, there's no dotted rhythms. It's pretty it would fit better into something with like a steady eighth note pulse.
And also the harmony is very static for a lot of that, right? Like in that you just get kind of a change in the bass I mean, you get the harmony change, but the bass stays the same in even the original performance. So
Totally.
again, really lending itself for ostinato, yeah, for sure.
And still, there is like one note that sounds a bit like a blue note to me. Oh, the violas. Yep. The Canon is there. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's just subjective, but there. I mean, it's just, yeah. Not that the whole thing is fitting in with any sort of key to begin with, but yeah, that one note feels like, oh yeah, they didn't change it to fit it into the box of what the cello and bass are establishing. Like they change it at the end. They do change the ending to make it lead more into the other thing, but yeah, they still let sort of that one, a couple of those notes just still peek out there.
And does it moves up a tone, does it?
Did it?
Da, 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 da.
Oh, I think I heard that.
Da, 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 da. Oh, maybe.
Oh, I hear pickle. Yeah. Although Yoda's theme does. Yoda's theme does.
Yoda's theme is the regular delivery. I was wrong there, but the ostinato changes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ostinato shifts up a tone, I think.
That's what gives it that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes from to, and then it also goes to, let's see. Oh no, that's the same as before. And then it goes up to, we'll find it. No, I lost it. But it does go down, which makes it go up again. Even if it's where it started, because we went down, it still goes up. And then we have some more ferociousness. This isn't the ferociousness. But here. Yeah. But they just slipped in a couple, tiny bit.
I think that's.
Is that what you mean by meanwhile?
Yeah. In a way, but no, I think like those little snatches of chaos and like flourishes, orchestral flourishes. I think that's what makes me love this so much, is that you have that beautiful building work, that almost like structural work that's going on with the melodies and the ostinatos and the suspense of this moment. But then you just have these little two bars where like John Williams is like, and now the strings do something amazing, like, because why not, right? But I do also really like that playing of Lando's theme as well, because like it feels so insincere earlier in the movie. Where it's kind of like, I am the administrator of this facility, and he's kind of like putting on airs.
Price of being successful.
Yeah, exactly. Like Lando the businessman, which you're always kind of like, yeah, this feels a little, and like I think the music is overdone in its kind of Richter grin cheesiness, it's like
it's full pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, I think this is the last time it's played in the movie, and therefore I guess the last time it's played in like
ever
the franchise. Where it's this kind of like genuine heroic moment where Lando has been kind of like a cad. And like now
Cad?
he's like a cad, you know.
What's
like
a cad?
A cad is I think it's like a more English expression, but it's like an old fashioned thing. I don't think anybody would use it these days. Like if you're in a 1930s gangster movie, you might say like he's nothing but a cad and a wherewithal, you know, like anyway.
So he's being a cad now, or was a cad before?
No, he was. He was. He, you know, he was being a player, right? Like, and like now it's this moment where like actually he's kind of like abandoning the pretense of being a suave, successful businessman and just saying like to the people that he's kind of responsible for, like he's saying, hey, like I'm now putting myself at risk to let you know that you are all at risk, and this is my last parting gift to you. And it's just, I don't know, it just feels like a nice return of that theme as more sincere.
I completely agree. And like Lando does, I'm not going to say save the day, but he clearly immediately regrets doing what he did and is trying to lessen the impact as much as possible. He knows that he screwed up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Beginning to like atone, I suppose. Or trying to atone is too strong still for, but you know, like trying to kind of begin to do that.
To at least stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
If possible.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's this little insert of Lando's of the Cloud City theme. It's like calm for a few bars. It's like if I just played that completely out of context and stopped it. Right. Okay, if I started right here. It sounds like Lando's. It sounds like the Cloud City theme. It doesn't sound too hectic. Now there is a little bit like the woodwinds are kind of doing like these kind of pesky
I think
like
it's the
eighth
timpani.
notes.
I think it's the timpani for me. The timpani's still going boom, boom, boom. Which
But at least the note is like, unless I don't hear bass notes correctly. I'm sure I'm off on bass notes sometimes, but it's still. It's not like chromatically opposed to what is being played.
Yeah.
So it kind of
true.
If it's still I agree. It still does feel like okay, maybe it's a little heavy-handed here. Maybe we'd reorchestrate that a little bit. But it like could be correct. It like they're slightly under pressure, but really trying to still pull something off gracefully.
Yeah. No, for sure. I maybe why I'm drawn to the timpani as well is because I think one of the very first great musical finales for any film was Franz Waxman. Sorry, the proper European pronunciation of his surname would be Waxman, but he only ever called himself Waxman. So I'll try and stick to that by what he would have called himself. His music for The Bride of Frankenstein from 1935, which has this incredible finale of the creation of the bride, which has this steady timpani beat throughout the entire sequence. And I think that's really what creates this kind of sense of a musical finale to the film. And on screen, actually, in that film, the timpani is visually doubled with the bride's heartbeat. So
cool.
as the monster is being created, the heart is beating, and Waxman's boom, boom, boom throughout this sort of maybe 10-minute sequence. Anyway, so I just always think of like timpani in these kind of grand musical finales as being like this agent of suspense, and in context, I think that is that. If you were to take it out as like just a 3-bar excerpt, I agree. It could just be like, here's the nice finale to the happy piece of music.
Yeah, perhaps voiced a little bit oddly because the timpani is not on the tonic; it's on the fifth, but it's still like diatonically related. But it's the fifth, which is a little like, you kind of would expect that, you know, if the strings are, so they're in B major, you kind of, if you're going to go to the fifth, you kind of expect to go back to the one at some point instead of just.
Yeah, true. That's a really good point. Yeah, and but you're also so right. It's the woodwinds doing the da, 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 that's like that wouldn't be there. I don't think if we were truly having this as relaxing. Not relaxing.
Yeah, just the staccato, like stacked woodwinds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are just like, oh, okay. We're nervous a little bit.
Yeah.
We're a little nervous.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it transitions to. Okay, that part reminds me of the asteroid field.
Yeah. It's so cool, though. I love that. Yeah. Very, very, very nice.
It's the arpeggio. It's the string arpeggios that are eighth notes with slashes in them. In other words, double 16th notes. It's like a thing that John Williams does. And I mean, it's a good idea compositionally, if you want to outline something but you want the notes to be changing by the eighth note, but you want something to sound faster and to double it up by making the eighth note into a 16th note, into two 16th notes. I wonder if any of that makes sense. You know what I'm talking about because of just the slashes.
Yeah, so the way it's notated is if you took the slashes out, it would be da 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 dum ba dum. But because he's notated with the slashes, it becomes digga 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 digga. Yeah, like that.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the asteroid field, it happens right. I'll play a little bit of a reference for people. Just because an excuse to hear the asteroid field, I guess. No, but you'll hear a similar sound from the violins, right about right here. Yeah. So the dugga 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 dugga.
And like, you know, this is all exactly that kind of thing that I was talking about with the kind of the musical sound of the Rebels' creative chaos.
The scrambling.
Yeah, scrambling. Exactly. Scrambling. Yeah. Yep. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I feel like while this is not, I'm not drawing these comparisons to, I don't know, draw too thick of a line between two scenes, but it is like just what you're saying is, there's something related about the mood that they're in. And for me, at least the way that I'm very loosely interpreting what you said at the beginning of this episode, like this is one of the things this score is doing. And something like this is, I don't know, like doing a sonic thing that just registers as like familiar. I know the kind of people that have music like this. The situation that they're in, the peril, the danger, the fear, the scrambling.
Yeah, that like even if you were to cut to the Imperials, you could keep this kind of slightly wild string writing underneath and retain the Rebels' sense of anxiousness and the intensity of their escape. You retain that as kind of like, I haven't forgotten about the Rebels and I know we're going to cut back to them in a moment. But here we're with the Imperials and maybe we'll get some brass riding over the top that's just like, here's what the Imperials are doing. They're much more definite, much more certain, but we're going to go back to the Rebels. So this kind of chaos and intensity stays underneath as almost like a cross-cutting, like a montage almost, like, you know, like a training montage where like you have the rocky gonna fly now, and then you might have like a few lines of dialogue with someone, but like because the track's still playing and they've just brought it down, like you're gonna cut back to the montage, but just for the moment you're just kind of sitting with the dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, let's keep going.
Now, power socket from a computer terminal.
Oh no, wait, we have to go back. Okay. Back a little bit more. Okay.
Hurry!
Attention, this is Lando Calrissian. Attention, the Empire.
And of course, when the shot changes, his sound changes.
This way.
But don't blame me. I'm an interpreter. I'm not supposed to know a power socket from a computer terminal.
Do you hear the strings are kind of doing a swarming again?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that I really, this is almost one of my favorite bits of this scenario, where we started off like kind of legible as to what the strings are doing, and now it's like just
No, it totally sounds just like a smearing, like a smearing of sound at this point, like just chromatic some stuff. It's what Dominic Sewell would call perhaps harmonic fudge, I think.
Cool. I also really like that little bit of timpani. I think the timpani all throughout this. I mean, I said before it's one of the great tuba scores. It's one of the great timpani scores as well, because like we've had this thing that is the timpani's been there ever since the kind of funereal march of Boba Fett and Han in the Carbonite, and like now like we've gone from having this rhythm throughout what we just heard, and we'll return to having that boom boom in there, but and then the timpani goes bum bum. It's just a really nice little declaration, kind of answering the brass little fanfare that we get there. I think, yeah, it's cool. It's just cool. I like it.
This would also be a good score to play harp on, or, if you knew how to play harp. But I mean specifically just the one section, the glissando section, and then some of these timpani things. I just it would feel. It sounds like it would feel really good to play some of those.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we are about to hit something very exciting, but we are in the corridor of Cloud City. People are still escaping. And what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think as well we might have seen. I should really have. Yeah, no, we have one of the very few special edition changes. In that we get views outside the corridor.
Oh, I was actually wondering about that. I have an image to put on screen. I was like, that's cool, but it also looks kind of fancy. Oh, you can see the colors that I've made for my background where they've been drawn from. Right. It like matches perfectly with it. So through the windows we see the reddish atmosphere of Cloud City.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure in the original 1980 film release that was just white walls.
Oh,
I think.
I can neither confirm nor deny, but it looks like that would make sense. But I like. How do you feel about special edition changes in general? I haven't really got
in general. I mean, like I think they have a very interesting historical place because it was George Lucas trying out ILM really before the prequels. And I think, one of the things that people often forget about with the prequels is their huge impact on the history of visual effects. The other course that I teach this semester is about film as technology, so we spend a lot of time thinking about CGI. But yeah, in general, like I'm a bit of a purist in that, like, man, I hate like Han shooting first, like that's. And like, as much as when I was a kid, I thought Jedi Rocks was like fantastic.
Okay.
Now I'm just like, yeah, that whole sequence is kind of embarrassing.
That's really interesting to me because I feel like usually what you liked as a kid is the one that you like.
Look, I probably still have a guilty pleasure in Jedi Rocks. But like objectively, I can see that like the kind of, the Jim Henson puppet show is like much more kind of, I think, artistically fulfilling than a very long, like I think it's John Williams' son who wrote, or maybe he just wrote the lyrics to Jedi Rocks. It's Jerry Hay, that's right, wrote the big band kind of arrangement.
I thought John Williams' son wrote Lopty Neck.
Oh, maybe it was Lopty Neck. I don't know. I could be wrong.
We'll get.
But it was definitely.
Don't worry, this will be
Jerry
covered
Hay.
in Return of the Jedi season.
So mostly, I think, and like there is another special edition edit which I just think really interferes with the flow of this sequence, where later on we kind of cut to Darth Vader saying, "Prepare my Star Destroyer for my arrival." It's kind of like, why do you need that? We understand. It was never confusing to anyone, I don't think, as to how Vader could go from being on Cloud City to being on his Star Destroyer speaking with Luke. I don't think that's. How is that confusing to anyone? Why did that need to be added in? I don't know. But to me, the big crime there is it disrupts the musical flow, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm getting there soon.
But
yeah.
Windows, sure. Having a better looking Cloud City, fine.
I think I find those in general. I don't know how I feel about special edition changes. I think the biggest concern, my biggest feeling about special edition changes is that I just wish all of the versions were accessible to the public, so that it was easy to compare and not feel like I really don't like the idea of all of my media being on streaming services and potentially they could just update anything and I wouldn't know. I mean, it feels kind of like gaslighting, right? Like I could have sworn it was like this color or something, and then maybe they updated the color grading or something. I mean, not that that's happened a ton yet in specific ways that affect me, but not having media makes that always a possibility. And with Star Wars,
sure.
the original, they're not even available for people.
Yeah, and like you get that with other films as well. Like the tinting in The Matrix is different, for whichever version you watch it. There's kind of a green tint to the world when you're in the world of The Matrix, and if you watch that on like DVD, like it's pretty strong compared to what it was actually in the cinema when it was released. And I agree with you.
Factor.
Like it's fine to have multiple versions. I'm totally fine with multiple versions. In fact, I think in some ways it's good to remind people that movies aren't like singular texts that like die when they're released because that's the only version that will ever be. Like that's just kind of ahistorical, like, totally. Going back to the silent era where like, there would be sound effects performed live for a lot of these films or different types of music. Like there is no one definitive version of a lot of these early films, and there shouldn't be. But like, it would be nice to have those versions available, I think.
Yeah. I think I've been... I say this as someone who is about to have a recording released of one of my pieces that I significantly changed kind of recently, where I'm like really struggling with whether I'm going to keep the same name. This is a piece of mine that people have already like bought the sheet music. People have already been performing it for like a few years. And I basically doubled changed. It's like in my heart, it's the same piece, but with like a big extension. But I'm like, I don't want to give it a new name, but I don't want to like gaslight the people that have already think that they know this piece and perform this piece by having two different versions. So at this point in time, I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
You can just date it. Like this is the 2023 version, right? Like, I mean, that's what, like we talked about the Rite of Spring before. Like, there's different versions of that.
But that's confusing, isn't it? It's confusing for me.
Yeah, but like it's only confusing once you get really close to it. I think as an average listener, you you would be hard pressed to point out the differences between the versions. I think it's the performance, but performers get paid to deal with that, right? Also, we're talking about On the Other Hand, right?
Yes.
I just think that's such a great name. So
I know. I want to keep the name.
keep the name. Keep the name.
Well, the people who bought it off my website, I have their email addresses, so I could theoretically let them know, hey, there's been an update. Do you want the update?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I like Jedi Rocks, and because I grew up with it, but I have also appreciated Laptinek in the past year. But the special edition changes to the music. I mean, luckily the music isn't affected too much, but in that one spot that you're talking about, the music is affected. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I think I had a fuller thought earlier, but I lost it, which is okay. All right, special edition changes. Okay, now we are entering the corridor.
This way.
But don't blame me. I'm an interpreter. I'm not supposed to know a power socket from a computer terminal.
Me neither. Han and Leia's theme sounding all different on us.
Yeah. Is it in a different? It's different harmonization, is it?
Yeah, I think the rhythm is the most striking thing for me.
Yeah. Da-ba-da-dum.
It's like. It's like compressed as well. It's sort of like. Okay, it sounds
Rushed,
like.
right.
Yeah, but then some parts are really elongated. It just. The timing of it is just. Some parts are held too long and some parts move too quickly. It's not to scale. It's sort of like we're playing Han and Leia's theme, but we don't have time to linger on things. But wait, we're going to hold this note a little bit too long because we're still running from something. It's sort of like having to. I don't know. It's like okay. It's like being on your phone, but then you have to cross the street. You're walking, by the way. You're walking, so you're like, okay, I just need to pause, like my game or whatever.
Yeah.
And then resume. Except they're escaping from blaster fire.
Yeah. I can totally see that. Yeah. But it's also, functionally, it's a nice way for Williams to throw in something familiar without it taking up a lot of like real estate. Like it's there and it's there clearly enough because it's just kind of like, I guess trombones maybe in octaves or something like that.
Horns and trumpets.
Oh, okay. There you go. Really, I could have. Maybe that's the horn that I'm hearing.
I mean, it could be trombones too. I don't know.
No.
I think it's all of them. I think it's all of them.
Okay.
Although I don't think anyone. Yeah. I never know for sure because the transcriptions that are like that float around slyly are not like official. I want to see the sheet music for the musicians who record on the film. That's really what I want to see. But I don't know if that's a thing that people have.
Yeah. I also feel like I could be wrong there because French horn is the one that, obvious solos and soli aside, I have the hardest trouble picking because I play trombone and trumpet. And so sometimes the horn just gets lost in the middle of, like sonically, I suppose. Yeah. Which is horrible because French horn is probably the most beautiful it is the most beautiful, I think, of the brass instruments, and probably the most versatile. Anyway, my own personal reflections on French horn aside, I think, the melody is quite clearly phrased there, so it's very easy to pick out, but it's also like, it's just not taking up a lot of space.
Yeah. Earlier when Yoda's theme was coming up and you were like, we were thinking, well, we should have had the foresight for this moment right here. We were like, well, I guess Yoda's theme just fits better. It's not like you're going to put Han and Leia's theme over all that stuff.
Yeah. But you know, like I think though there is an important distinction here because like we are building in this moment to
The finale.
Yeah. And we know something's happening here with Han and Leia. I think, you know, it is thematically resonant, whereas before it was just we're being chased and we're searching for a way out. And Lando is doing his heroic thing. That's kind of the musical journey of that sequence. So I think, yeah, like chucking in Han and Leia, even if it would have worked.
True.
Yeah, narratively it wouldn't.
Your point
too
still
early.
stands. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to point something out when we listen to this now. You know what I'm going to say already.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we see people coming out from the corridor. We just saw Willrow Hood.
Yeah. One of the best inventions of the
fandom
community. Yeah.
And for those who don't know, I'm putting a picture on screen. Willrow Hood is the person holding the ice cream tub.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what the real life prop was, right? If you've ever been to Star Wars Celebration, have you ever been to Star Wars Celebration, Dan?
No, sadly.
Oh,
no.
okay. One of the
I would
best
really
things
love
is
to
the
one day.
Willrow Hood run, where like hundreds of people dress up in orange jumpsuits and all together like go down the elevator holding their tubs.
That's
It's really
so
amazing.
good.
Yeah, super good. Except not great during COVID, and then Celebration last year was like a super spreader event, so that's not good.
Jeez.
But yeah, a legend.
Yeah.
And if you look him up on Wikipedia, he is listed under legends. However, The Mandalorian season 2, I believe, is I think I remember in season 2 they put that prop, that ice cream maker, in the show and gave it like a purpose. And so that was pretty funny. I can't remember what it is. A camtono under his arm. Yeah, it's a camtono, a kind of security container for storing valuables. Notable users of camtonos included the client, Cobb Vanth, Willrow Hood, and the Pike Syndicate. So, yeah. It's now
great.
made its way into canon.
It is illustrative though as to where like a lot of these iconic objects, like for the original trilogy, were just kind of stuff that was lying around. Like as well, like if you look up the Graflex camera, which is 1940s like proper old flash photography with like a bulb that like an electric light.
Was this the
Yeah, I don't know
Andor
if-
kids?
No,
Was this-
no.
oh.
This is much more centrally canonic than this. The handle. See, you've got one of the find a photo with. Sorry to tell you what to do.
No.
If you can find a photo with the flash, attached.
Okay.
And then I reckon you'll immediately see what we're talking about.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the handle of the flash is Luke's lightsaber.
What?
Yeah, or like Anakin's, like the one that he gets in Ben's hut in
Wow.
Yeah. So like they basically just took that off the camera and added like a few things, like there's a little handle attachment and stuff like that. But like if you get one of those cameras
I can
today,
see
yeah,
it.
you can just there you go. Like you've just got Luke's lightsaber.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It also looks like the Death Star, kind of.
Yeah.
The laser.
Yeah. But yeah, the
The laser is a big flash.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't really. I didn't realize flashes looked like that. It's like a disco.
Yeah.
Some of them look like it's like a disco ball turned inside out.
Yeah, it's just meant to illuminate light. And like, I don't know if that's pardon me, quite the case with this particular version, but certainly earlier flash photography, like you see film premieres of like the 1920s, and like the red carpet is just covered in glass because the bulb in the camera would blow up, and or you know, would be a one use only, and so you just like literally rip out the bulb, throw it on the ground, and you know, rearm yourself to take the next photo, and so there'd all be these, you know, little glass bulbs on the ground, and people would step on it, and it would just be a sea of broken glass.
Oh my God.
Events. Yeah.
That adds a new layer of like violence to like paparazzi and stuff.
Yeah. yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Anyway.
okay. So we just spotted Willrow Hood. I know that if we had forgotten about him, we would have heard about it.
Oh yeah.
Rightfully so. R2 is sticking out his probe. In the background, I'm hearing like a pseudo rebel fanfare type of thing.
Yeah. Da-da-dum. Yeah. Similar rhythm, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Similar chords, I think, too. But it's kind of hard to tell.
Well, similar in the sense, yeah, for sure, that if nothing else, they're alternating kind of triads moving over a pedal bass, which is basically what the rebel fanfare is. If they're not exactly the same chords, then it's the same idea.
Yeah. Filigree.
We're not interested in the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon. It's fixed.
Stop everything. We need a fanfare.
Yeah. It's so good. It's so good though. Again, like
I know.
just out of nowhere. Like bum ba dum bum 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 bum.
We got that one for free. John Williams didn't have to give us that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's you know, it's this beautiful little moment because it kind of like suspends in exactly the same way that similar fanfares work in the Battle of Yavin. It like suspends the drama for just a moment where like suddenly out of all this tension it's like dum ba dum bum 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 bum. That's actually, I hadn't thought of that before. Those two fanfares
like a
are
narrator.
quite similar. Yeah. But it's also like it's like here's the tension. I'm just like gonna hold it in like some tweezers or something for a moment while this little heroic bit comes through, and then we'll just release it and let the machine whir away again after it. And dramatically it works with this moment. It's like he hasn't picked this incidentally because it's kind of like a little moment of heroism for R2, and a little like reprieve, right?
Yeah. I feel
Super
like
cool.
what you just said about the just pausing the drama for a little bit, I think that is one of the things that makes Star Wars feel safe to like that makes the audience feel taken care of. Like it kind of reassures viewers that like this is a hero's tale. This is going to be okay. That, like, you know, I'm kind of here with you or something.
It's like that, you know, that anecdote. I might have even said this on a previous episode. I have like 4 anecdotes, and I just repeat them constantly. That Allen Ginsberg went to see the first Star Wars, and as soon as A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away came up on the screen, he turned to his film-going companion and said, thank God, I don't have to worry about it. Being like that sci-fi at that point in time was, you know, 2001 or Planet of the Apes, which are all like very much like allegories of human failure to some degree. You know, you have to worry about the science fiction in the science fiction movie, whereas this is like, it's a fairy tale. It's like a long time ago. It's like once upon a time. And for sure, that's the mode of the music.
That's a good anecdote. I don't think I've heard you say that one before.
Oh, okay,
I don't think so. So
we'll keep talking long enough, and I'll bring it up again.
I do want to revisit the Battle of Yavin, although it's a long track, so I probably won't needle drop at the right place, but let's try. Here we go. It's a very similar thing that's happening, for sure. And both of them remind me of the planets.
Fantastic needle drop.
I know. Twice in one episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just a little pause to have a moment of heroism and like just a full like proper peel of brass. You know, like they kind of. It's like a Canon, I guess.
Yeah, it's a Canon.
Yeah.
Which she also loves a brass Canon. That's funny. The Battle of Hoth, it's called like parentheses Ion Cannon, Imperial Walkers, and I was just thinking like, oh wait, wrong kind of cannon, but maybe both.
Yeah.
Something that John Williams really does is give instruments like many moments to do what their instrument it does really well. Give the brass a chance to do a proper, whatever you said, proper peel. Is that what it's called?
I don't know.
For some reason, I know what you meant when you said that, but I don't know how I would use it in a sentence. So,
well, you know, I do think that some of this comes from, you know, John Williams talking about the kind of almost first 10 years of his film music career where he worked for, I think it was like CBS or one of the TV stations in America where like he was writing music week in, week out for TV shows and stuff like that before he transitioned to, you know, How to Steal a Minute and those kind of really early films that he wrote the score for, is that he talks about like having the space while writing TV music to go, because they had like a house orchestra. And so to like, while he was writing or in between recording sessions or whatever, just like walking over to the double basses and going, hey, is that passage that okay? Like, how would you do that? Like to make it easier for you or best for you on the instrument. And like, you know, you do that for long enough. And like, yeah, it's one of John Williams' incredible strengths is that he genuinely is writing not for the orchestra in a way that perhaps other more contemporary composers would do, especially if you're using virtual instruments where like it doesn't matter what
you write.
It's easy to play. Yeah. Like you because a human's not playing it for you right in front of you, right? That John Williams spent like a really decent apprenticeship kind of like getting to know the players of an orchestra, I think, and how his music fit in with almost the ergonomics of the instrument, you know, like what's possible. So for sure, like, yeah.
Man, that must be nice. But also not everyone would do that in his position. So it's great that he took initiative to do that. A lot of, you know, not everyone cares about that to the same degree, but it really shines through. But at the same time, it's not like he writes things that are just straight up easy. He still challenges the instruments. But there's just, I don't know, just I feel like as a player, if you were playing a John Williams score, you know that your instrument's going to have something fun that will not be thankless work. It will be it will be a lot of work, but it'll be like a part where people are like, that sounds awesome. What a cool, impressive string part. What a cool brass fanfare, you know.
That is so true. Although I have to say, I think 'cause we did a John Williams concert to celebrate his 90th. When I say we, I mean out of the school. We programmed it and we hosted it on stage with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. It was incredibly gratifying. But like kind of, yeah, it was so much fun. And like, but just getting to work with the orchestra a little bit more and see what it's like to do that. I feel like, you know, at the end of the 2 nights of doing this and like playing like like they were long shows as well. I think if we were to do them again, we'd probably cut a good 15 minutes. The poor orchestra. They were also like, it was really the kind of doom like laden feeling because COVID was ripping through the chorus that we'd gotten for that show, which is not uncommon. But at the end of those 2 nights, I think the brass players were like, fantastic work. Loved every minute of it. Huge standing applause. Like the brass, like we are real heroes. The percussion was like fantastic. You know, like this is great. And the strings were just like, I need to go home. I need to go and rest.
That actually does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That checks out for not just John Williams, but I think, well, not problem, but like there's so many strings that it's usually like the sections that do cool stuff, they get like a special bow. They get a special shout out. But when there's like, when there are like 50, 60 strings or you don't really feel that special. You're just part of the section.
I think as well, because like the cool stuff for the brass is like da 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 da, and the cool stuff for the strings is like,
that is also very true. The cool stuff for the strings is like it takes 3 seconds to hear 32 notes and 3 hours to practice that.
Yeah, exactly.
It is kind of unfair. What the string players need is more love. Everyone. I'm just kidding. Well, that's
Where even are we? What?
We are actually speaking of strings, I think we're about to happen upon some beautiful string part that is actually one of those fun parts that is not 32 notes in 3 seconds. Reminds me of Tchaikovsky for some reason. I always say that though.
We're not interested in the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon. It's fixed. Just open the door, you stupid lump.
Okay, we're about to hit it. Here we go.
I never doubted you for a second. Wonderful.
Oh, 2 great things. The strings, the violins get to sing out Han and Leia's theme. The rhythm is restored. It is a very romantic. It is kind of over the top. There's like a big crash when we hit that downbeat. It is extremely earnest and beautiful and not cynical. And yeah, this is something strings are good at leading. It's not a string thing. It's, to be clear, it's a writing thing. It's what John Williams wrote. But it was, I'm just saying, putting the strings there is a good choice for this romantic, earnestly romantic thing. And the pedal point, which I think is what you are particularly interested in, which is the cello and bass are they're going to be holding the same. They're going to be holding the same G for quite some time. Just going to be re-articulating that over and over and over again. The tension will be more apparent as we go through it, but we also need to call out 3PO saying "wonderful" because
it is wonderful.
It is. It's very wonderful. Here's one of those instances where the interactions between 3PO and R2, I don't know, like obviously they're comic relief pretty much all the time, or at least often, but their friendship is so it's so nice. It's so great on screen. Like they're such a great on-screen pair.
Yeah, it's so true. Like I think like people forget that was another of the kind of innovations, like borrowed from Kurosawa and The Hidden Fortress, but of the original film, of kind of the perspective, at least for most of the first don't know, third of the movie is from the droids, the sidekicks. And really, you know, like I guess in a way now we can say, you know, like George Lucas's plan was almost in a way that the whole double trilogy is from the droids' perspective, and perhaps less so, but still they're there for a lot of the action in the sequel trilogy. To the point where, you know, one of the cheesy everything rhymes moments of Rise of Skywalker is having 3PO have the last line, I think, of the movie where he says, "Did you hear that?" Which is the first line of the first movie.
Oh, I never made that
It all
connection.
links. But yeah, no, for sure. For sure. People talk a lot, like I've spent, you know, in writing my book and writing the article on George Lucas, like I've spent quite a lot of time looking at the original reviews of the contemporaneous reviews of Star Wars, and like a lot of people talk about how they love the droids. Like the droids is what humanizes the movie for them, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
And definitely the case in Empire. It's just doubled down. I mean, they get a theme.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Theme that comes and goes. So here what's happening is R2 is doing something that I don't know exactly what he's doing. He has his probe in the thing and they talk about it, but I'm really bad at remembering the exact specifics of the technical thing that's happening. Okay, I think he's overriding the security systems. There we go. So he's overriding the security systems, and 3PO says, "I never doubted you for a second," after he's like been berating him. He's just open the door, you stupid lump, and then R2 does the thing, and the door opens, and then 3PO. But yeah, I just want that. I need to get a ringtone of that, an alarm clock, and I guess a text tone. That should be someone's text tone. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I never doubted you for a second. Wonderful!
Okay, now R2 is about to spray some mist or smoke or something. Oh my gosh, this music. Okay, so what's happening right now is we see Lando crouching. He's like hurt or something, and he is trying to, you know, hold off. He's trying to basically make it more possible for Leia to escape.
Mm-hmm.
He's being a hero at this point.
And as well, though, like, you know, going back to what I was saying about the Rebels music being chaotic, is that this is one of the rare instances where there's such a clear, strong melody in a moment of chaos. But even then, you still get like, like the trumpets going in amongst all the chaos, and like there are all these little moments where, like, yeah, even though we're getting kind of the certainty that this is probably the rebels win moment, as close as the rebels triumph in this movie, which is they never win, they only escape to fight another day. It's telling us that, but there's still that kind of, yeah, like all over the place kitchen sink orchestration.
Do you think the trumpets doing the da-da-da-da-da are fall into the category of things that are telling the audience that things are going to be okay? Or do you think they're adding to the tension?
I think they're reminding us of the tension. But in this particular example, I think they're doing so in a way that seems a little bit more triumphant. So it's like, it's still chaos, because if it wasn't chaos, then it might just be the bump ba-dum, you know, part of it. But because it's the I can't even do that.
Yeah.
it's like this real kind of like out of nowhere, like you can't quite follow everything that's going on in the music in the same way as like what's on screen is still chaotic enough that you know, like, yeah, it's action everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. The Han and Leia's theme, I feel like it's really, if that alone could border on tragic. It could go tragic for me, because I don't hear their theme as like the heroes are doing something good. The heroes are going to be fine. I hear the Han and Leia theme as like Leia is like in shock. Her feelings of love are escalated because of what happened to Han. Sort of all these things, basically Leia's feelings. The dramatic like love story has just become more urgent. Yeah.
Yeah. And like that pedal as well. Like I think we know that it's a pedal and that there's unresolved tension by the second bar of the playing of the melody, I think.
Oh, let's hear that again. Let's hear that without the sound effects. I'm really good at needle dropping to fanfare starts. That's what I've learned today. I'm just kidding.
See, already by there.
Yeah.
And here, definitely.
Doom, G, G, A flat, A flat, A flat. I just get overwhelmed right there.
I know. It's so, like, there's a reason that the first full trailer for The Force Awakens used Han and Leia's theme, I think. Like, I in my book, I talk about that being like this, because that wasn't used in the prequels. It was like a nostalgia target to go, hey, this is in line with those movies that you loved, not the movies that you hate, to a certain audience member anyway. But like, they also used it because it's just such a good theme and is one of the themes, one of maybe two or three themes in the whole Star Wars saga that is really capable of doing that old world Hollywood emotional swell where it is overwhelming, as you say, like emotionally. It's just like for those people watching rather than listening, like I was like conducting along. Like I kind of want to do that every time I hear this stretch of music. Like that resolution is so powerful.
It's the way that like they go over a crest. It sounds like they go over a crest, and that's like a very overwhelming part in like a good way, but like in just a lot of emotion way. Yeah. So the pedal point has gone up to an A flat, where it is, I feel like Han and Leia's theme outside of this part of the film does often have a pedal. Like it's one of the things that's like makes their love theme kind of complicated. Always. It's always been complicated. Their theme is like, doesn't sound easy like it's easy to listen to because it's pretty, but it's not uncomplicated love. And you talk about that in your Art of the Score episode, one of them. I think, yeah.
You can't hear that, can you, my piano?
No.
No, that's good. That's fine. As I said before, it's probably best that I don't do that. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it is. I agree. And it is the G that's the pedal, but it's because by the time you get to the end of that first phrase, you're ending on an A, and the A and the G together, like that's a bit awkward, right? For those who are not literally looking at a piano at the moment, what I'm talking about is the da-da-da-da, that da-da-da-da, that's an A, and the pedal is the G. So, exactly, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the A flat, which is even more awkward because that's just closer together.
But the top
Yeah.
note changes too. Right? Wait, let's
No.
hear it.
I mean, sorry, that's what I mean. Sorry, the top note changes. It changes the second phrase. Da 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 da. The da da is an A flat.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
With the
Okay.
pedal being a G.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super. And that's
Yeah.
what an F sharp. Yeah, so like we're basically like chromatically moving around G without actually hitting on G, which is why it sounds so tense because, yeah, it is.
It sounds tense, but not in a directionless way that like a horror cue sounds tense, where you're like, I don't even know how I would resolve this if I even tried. This is like you kind of feel where you want it to resolve, but it's just not doing it, right? It's like... Where do you want that to go? You want it to go there.
Yeah. And then repeat of the first phrase, and then finally we go up to the G flat when it hits the C. And we're like, okay, now we're going somewhere.
It's like some Neapolitan action. I don't know if that's actually what's happening. Well, G to A flat, actually. Sure. We have some flat too. Yeah.
And then it finally, yeah. And like a little bit of that tension comes back just because of the nature of the melody at the end. But that release down to the F is so good. It's so good because it just feels like almost like everything that all the tension we've been following over the last like 2 or 3 minutes on screen, like has been funneled into that pedal and then released. And it's like, yeah, they're going to get away.
Yeah, it does feel like okay, so we're here, right? This is the G in the bass, and then whatever it's happening. Like when the bass line starts descending, first of all, because the notes are shorter, so the movement is starting to happen faster. It feels sort of like, okay, the ball is now rolling, and it goes to, I don't know, that because I'm thinking about where the part where like I get really emotional, and it is when that ball starts rolling. Yeah. Like you kind of, I don't know, just like the feeling, the feeling changes there. Has something to do with the descending bass line, and of course the harmonies that are resulting from, those shifting notes. But yeah, I don't know. Psychologically, the bass, there is something, I don't know, happening on a physiological level that I don't know how to explain.
Well, and then we have some fantastic Rebel. Yeah. And then the pedal returns, but in a slightly different guise.
Yes. Let's continue listening. See, the pedal has gone down. Wait, do you hear the? I only heard it just then. I've never heard it before.
Oh.
I didn't hear
Yeah,
it.
like a Irae.
Yeah, kind of like a Irae.
Of course. Why wouldn't there be?
I don't even
if you're throwing in
know-
everything else into this.
I don't even know what instrument that was. You can't hear it in the film, just in the soundtrack. Violas, like it's not exactly, but it feels like. I'm gonna ask Alex Ledwig about this. I don't know. Well, is that what my gosh, I don't know, but it was kind of interspersed with those. You know what I mean? You heard it.
Yeah. Is it strings?
That's amazing.
Maybe?
Trombone? I don't know. It's kind of one of those middle instruments. Like it's at least it's something playing in the very middle of the range.
Can you play it once more?
Yeah, I would love to.
I think over my internet connection, the compression is strong enough that I don't think I'm going to pick that out. But you're right; it's a middle.
Yeah, it's a middle thing. Interesting. Yeah. Again, not the exact notes of Dies Irae, but sometimes Dies Irae is still referenced in the shape of. Yeah. So not saying that this is exactly what that is, but it's just interesting to pick up. It's just a little fun little nugget. And here's where the pedal has returned. And the pedal changed right there, but yeah, it's getting tense again. Mm-hmm. And it's also the G again.
Yeah, so literally the same pedal.
No, wait.
It's a D major chord that ends it, I think. So it's like A flat minor. A flat major. This is great because now I can tell you all the stuff, but you won't hear my terrible playing.
Dan is picking things out of the piano that no one can hear, and then telling me he's working it out without any of us hearing.
B flat major.
In the same, on top of it.
Yeah. So no. So it goes A flat, B flat, A flat, and then D major.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Over the top of G, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oops. Something like that.
Which is just super cool and like really like I want to describe it as like crunchy. Like there's some real crunchy chords in there that don't really go that nicely together, but they do in context.
Yeah. It's kind of like what Han and Leia's theme. I mean, we're still kind of on that, but dancing around the pedal, dancing around the note that it's not, it takes a while to reach.
Yeah, like if you were to do that, I mean the D major triad that phrase ends on has an F sharp, so to have that placed against the pedal of G just sounds like if you opened a pop tune with that, I feel like what?
It sounds kind of nice.
Yeah. Now that
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in context, actually the D major sounds almost like relief in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Why is that? Let's listen again. I mean, the second time the chord changes, the pedal changes, so that makes sense. But the first time it does still sound relieving when we get there.
But even then, when the pedal changes, it changes to a C, which is
true.
Doesn't really make a whole lot more sense.
Is there anything? Okay. I guess if the A flat over the G, you're still getting that half step with the. Why does it? Maybe it's because it's a. No, they're all major chords. What's happening there?
The genius of John Williams is what's happening there. I think that, I don't know. I think actually it's kind of almost like it's his jazz.
Yeah, it sounds jazzy.
Like if you wrote that out on piano, that's kind of almost like a Bill Evans. Jeez, what am I talking about?
Bill Evans?
Yeah, Bill Evans.
But now I'm like,
Gil Evans. Bill, like his whole kind of, modal inventions in the 50s and then later with Miles Davis, but, like the kind of just piling chords on top of each other with these beautiful voicings that aren't necessarily related. Getting these wonderful chords of just like, like, I don't know, probably offending every jazz person out there, but even if you just play a C major triad with a D major triad over the top on piano, like that to me is his kind of beautiful, jazzy, reflective sort of sound. I wonder whether it's a similar kind of thing here where like you've just essentially got a bunch of planing triads, which they kind of are, and that's kind of the Revel fanfare, right?
Yeah.
But over a pedal, which I don't know, like it's not like it's completely out of kilter, but it's not. Yeah, I don't know what key we're in. I should probably
B major, maybe? Oh, no. No. What am I talking about? What key are we in at this? It's the, I don't even know. What, let's see. And now it's all confusing because it's, I mean, the point, this music is not is not like monotonal whatsoever. So, you know what that reminds me? It reminds me of those chords when we go away from Tatooine, the planetary. What does Frank Lehman call them? Something chords. They are in The New Hope, and they are like, yeah, I don't know what they're called. They're like a tritone apart. I don't know why it reminds me of that. I feel like there's like a strong, but now I'm also thinking about Mars. So
I think we're in C. And so I know it doesn't really, but if you think about basically what the pedal tone is doing, then that would make sense because the pedal is the fifth, which is a really kind of weak and unsettled place to have a pedal. And then that moment where it moves up to the C gives a slight, like, there's a solidity to that, which would make sense. I still don't really know what we're doing with a flat,
and you're talking
B flat,
after
and D major.
You're talking after the Han and Leia part that we already did, right?
Yeah. I'm just talking about this section. I wonder if we're in C, and that would kind of make sense in a way. Yeah, if you do those same chords but with a C in the pedal rather than a G, try that.
Interesting. Well, let me put this up an octave. Okay.
Just leave the C triad out. Just do the C. Sorry to again instruct.
No, I like this. I like it. It's fun.
just a raw
you're
C.
right.
No,
you're right. I hear
triad.
it. I hear it. Yeah. Sounds like it does sound like a jazz thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the pedal is G, which is what confuses things and makes it so tense and effective. Yeah. Yeah.
So then when we go, I'm just trying to think of. That's cool stuff.
It is super cool. I feel like massively out of my depth when it comes to this kind of level of harmonic analysis, which is not probably not that high. Like even though I'm like a film music person and like a composer, like my highest music theory education is like high school. So I kind of feel like a real fraud just kind of pulling it together with ear training basically at this point. So especially compared to your amazing guest you had on earlier this season, the piano dude from, was it Thunder?
Oh, Dennis Hamm. Yeah, Thundercats pianist. Yeah.
I hope he doesn't listen to this episode. Really screaming at his phone or whatever, going, "It's insane!"
No,
anyway,
he has an ear that I can't even keep up with his ear. I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
And he's like, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dennis. Yeah. Okay. So I guess we should continue listening. Lots of filigree. Blatant rubbing. And I love this part. Now that is the reason you play timpani.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. or piccolo, those rips like rum rum.
Yeah.
Like like why learn the most piercing instrument in the orchestra if not for the ability to fly up to that top note? So that resolves to C. So I think it is.
Yeah. Good job.
We got there. But like that pedal as well, like it moves up to A really briefly as well. And then back to G again, like when it's just like really just sitting there, like making things feel uncertain. Yeah, it's like, I think, actually I would have to count. I think it's 32 bars that pedal just kind of hangs there. Like it moves around slightly, but it's mostly just sitting there, which is, that's where that tension comes from. And where the release, when it, the hit arrives, which is just so fantastic.
The pedal does go to a C a little bit earlier, but it doesn't sound resolved at all because with the other. Well, obviously it's C there. See there, it's C. And it's super awkward when it's A right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because like if it's an A pedal in C, that's sixth.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. Just really uncomfortable. Really, really weak to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what's surrounding it because I guess it could elicit a perceived shift to a different chord, where it's like doing a minor 6, like it's not weird in that context, but
No.
it's weird when you're doing this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, which is like. What are the viols doing? The viols are playing, I think, C flat and. I don't know. I can't read what I'm looking at. It's too small and too. Oh no, they're in trouble. No wonder. Okay, never mind. Crisis averted. I'm like, wow, my alto clef sucks more than I thought.
Well, I can't read alto clef at all, so I will be in trouble if I need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we have this happening. Of course. It just doesn't sound stable.
And those lovely little, I think, trumpet things that like tell you the end is coming, as well as the harmony kind of being drawn out to the furthest possible point that it can be. This, it's been going on for such a long period of time, and there's kind of a rhythmic sense of finality, but those trumpets going dippa-dippa, dippa-dippa, it's like really trying to get it together for the big hit, right? Yeah.
It is pushing everyone to the finish line.
Yeah.
Scooch.
Come on. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, exactly.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, the trumpet really does tell us that the end is coming. It's like a little bit before that. A. Doo-doo. Crescendo, roll. And this final note, which is, played fortissimo, or at least like forzando by the celli and basses. I mean, most of the orchestra is hitting those loud points at the end, but the violins are overlapping with that super, super soft, high-pitched, creepy thing at the end. So it's kind of like visually the shot is like we cut from Han and Leia, or not Han, Han's not with them. Leia, the Falcon basically successfully like getting out of there, and and it's like massive relief. But then we cut back to what Luke is up to.
Yeah, it's immediately tempered by that. But also it's like that same kind of like string clusters is how we began this cue.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is like it's what I was saying about the music being the meanwhile, right? Like, because it's almost like we've cut back to this other thing in like the track, like the pop song that was playing during the Vader battle. Like we've gone back in the radio that was on, in that scene. We've switched bands, right? Like switched stations, and we're back on where we musically left that little episode, or began that episode. But like it has a similar kind of effect, I think.
I think this is like a perfect example of the meanwhile, because it just literally like the shot. I mean, it's one of those cuts where, I mean, it's what's happening musically is what's happening visually. These overlapping stories, we immediately go to the next thing. We're not doing a pause. This is meanwhile. This is still technically, they're all still technically part of the same cue. And the cluster is like the violins obviously playing up very high, but they're kind of doing a similar effect that we've seen elsewhere, which is like, let's put this up. Yeah, let's get a piercing octave up here. We have like half of them playing this and the other half playing. So together it's.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It's cool though. It's just that perfect. Like we don't really know where we've been left from that scene. Like, you know, Luke is obviously not doing super well. We don't know what kind of environment we're returning back to.
Yeah. But I think one of the things about the overlap that makes it effective is that we don't clearly hear the onset of that creepy violin thing, like that sustain. It's just when, by the time that loud, triumphant final C fades out, it's just, wow, this other creepy thing has been here for how long? It's been here. And so it feels like we've just been dropped into it.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, yeah, that's spot on. And it's interesting, though, that it's kept in the same key. I mean, not that that cluster has, you know, like a super, super straightforward sense of home, but yeah, like, you know, I think something that other composers have done in a lot of other movies is like when we're changing scenes, is to kind of like have a different tonal center for each scene that we're cutting between. That's an easy trick, right? Like in that it gives you a sense of going somewhere else. But like here it's like staying there because, well, you know, this music once again ends with a bit of silence or just sound design. But it's kind of like it's clinging, it's almost like pulling back on the sense of hope and relief that we just experienced because it's using the same tonality. It's like the victory we've just experienced, like hold that thought because like we're not really done yet. We're continuing.
Have you heard of the 15-second rule?
Like picking stuff off.
Oh,
off
no,
the ground after you drop.
No.
I know, I've heard of that 15 second. No, not another one.
So I learned about this from Frank Lehman's book, Hollywood Harmony,
Right.
where he talks about how, I don't know if this was a composer or something, named Leonid Sabanev. I actually don't know who that is. But this person, I think, had this sort of guideline, which was like, okay, so these are my notes. So I might be misquoting, but these are just my notes. Okay, the 15-second rule implies a commitment to the experiential surface rather than the background of film structure. Okay, anyway, he implored composers not to make use of overly complex harmony or counterpoint during crucial dialogue scenes. That's not the most important part. Let's see. Okay, here. Tonal relations do not retain perceptual power over a gulf of 15 seconds of silence. A composer has no obligation to relate one cue to its close neighbors in any harmonic respect if there's been 15 seconds of silence. However, if the gap has lasted less than 15 seconds, the new cue must start in the same key or a closely related one. So this is what one guy said. Basically, if you're starting something like this, bumper to bumper cues, then you need to kind of stay in the same, some related, unless it's been 15 seconds, in which case it's fine. You can do something unrelated. So what you're saying, I think what you're saying is you're hearing kind of things that violate this one person's 15-second rule, like.
Well, I mean, yeah, like other examples, but this example doesn't. This
yeah,
example,
exactly. Not this example,
yeah.
but where you're hearing some other composers maybe just like start the new thing in a completely different tonal center when it's perhaps too soon. It's too jarring because it hasn't been. Again, 15 seconds is arbitrary, but here is, even though it's a very different cue, we're noting that it's still kind of same tonal center.
Yeah. That's really, really interesting. Yeah. I like that. It makes me feel embarrassed that I haven't read more of Frank's book.
I haven't made it all the way through yet, but it's when I have time, I'll do like a chapter, but it's pretty dense and I want to take some semblance of notes on it. So it's okay. I'm not rushing.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so that's happening, and let's hear it in the context of the film now, so we can hear how smooth that transition is, and how it really sneaks up on you. Like, is the music still happening? Again, this is a very common like composer technique, not just film music, but just like classical music, to overlap someone playing loud with someone playing soft at the same time, such that when the loud thing stops, the soft thing is already there. because it is kind of sometimes you want to make the entrance not obvious. Sometimes you just want a pad of sound to be existing without hearing, where you're coming in. And there are all kinds of techniques for that, like staggering instruments so that it kind of creeps in on you. But this is just a very classic one, really good scoring, really good composition technique. All right. Okay, I'll go back further because it was a little too smooth.
I thought that hairy beast would be the end of me. Of course I've looked better.
And now we are transitioned very smoothly back to Luke. Kind of amazingly smoothly after how bombastic what we just heard was.
Yeah. No, it is really impressive. Really genuinely impressive. Yeah. I'm glad you're highlighting that because I think it's something that I've always kind of been subconsciously aware of, but never fully focused on. Yeah, it's such an effective transition.
And this is the heroic shot of them leaving on the Falcon. I'm questioning whether some of this is special edition visuals or not. It looks pretty clean. Looks pretty crisp.
Yeah.
But now we are where Luke is just kind of looking around on the gantry. I don't actually know what a gantry is, but
let's call it a gantry.
And again, that howling wind, the reactor sounds.
They're great sounds.
This footstep, yeah. They're so melodic too. Oh. Okay, we're pretty much at the end of the minutes. The music is gone. But okay, this is what I'm hearing. It sounds like a shark attack. When Darth Vader comes in, and then it doesn't help. The lightsabers are basically going like half step.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I'd not really thought about that in terms of pitch before, but you're so right. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's also like, but I think it's. I mean, obviously, it's what's happening on screen, but with his breathing and the kind of the lightsaber, it's kind of like you can feel his annoyance. I think he's kind of like, okay, like, come on, you're beaten. You know, it's useless to resist, etc. But he's kind of like you feel that through his performance and through the sounds that it's kind of like, like you, please, come on, like, give up. Don't make me fight any longer. Like. We all see how this is going, and I'm kind of annoyed that I've had to continue.
I'm having to take a long time to subdue you, much longer than I carved out for.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a schedule. And if you noticed as well, I don't know if it's possible for you to bring up the very final frame of the minutes that you sent through.
It can be done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because
oops. What? Okay. I wonder what you're seeing in these. Okay, I'll put it up on screen in a second. This?
On my computer, when I played the minutes as you sent them across.
Oh wait, no, you're right.
It was a flash.
Yeah, no, there was. The bar said the last. Okay. It keeps restarting. I have to catch. Yeah, I know what you mean. There's like a. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna catch it. No, I didn't catch it. Oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play it super slow. Okay. I'm gonna play it at 0.07 speed. It's gonna be really ridiculous. Okay. Yeah, you can probably hear it.
Oh my god.
Oh gosh, let me turn that. Let me mute that. Okay. What about the flash while
So
it's slowly getting there?
this basically, what I think is interesting, just pure happenstance, is that the flash and where the screen is paused is you can so clearly make out the matte painting that they've used to film this
Oh, no
sequence.
way. Okay. Now I definitely need to pull it up. Okay.
Or like matte painting, like painting over glass, basically. So they do painting on glass and then
Oh, you mean the reflection?
yeah. Not really. There's like light, but you can see. I wonder whether this
Is this it?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. There you go. So you can see the kind of dome.
Yeah, I do see a dome.
Yeah. And like, yeah, again, like probably that light shouldn't really reflect on a wall that's that far away. So you can see basically that what is illuminated in this image, for those of you who are watching, sorry, this would be quite
Is actually
bewildering
the
to
very-
those listening. Yeah, so that's the set.
Oh my gosh. I see what you're saying. All the part that doesn't have the flash is the matte painting.
Yeah, so what that would be is a painting that's placed in front of the camera lens. This is how a lot of these special effects were done at this point, really up until the 90s. A really detailed matte painting that is placed in front of the camera, and then what is illuminated is actual filmed stuff. So you can extend, so you don't actually have to build a huge chasm.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah. That's why I'm quite glad that you were able to bring that up, and it's just kind of happenstance that happened to freeze there.
Good
because,
catch.
Yeah, like, it's like that's what was actually filmed. And I don't think I won't be able to find, but the Rinsler book that I've got in front of me has got a lot of these matte paintings, so I could probably, I'm sure it's in here somewhere.
So how do they who is the person that figures out like the proportions of everything?
Yeah, well, I mean, so this shot would have been relatively planned in advance. I don't know who would figure out exactly between like the set designer and the production designer, but so like some of these paintings were done by like Ralph McQuarrie. Some of them were done by Joe Johnston, who ended up being a film director in his own right. He directed Jurassic Park 3 and the first Iron Man and The Rocketeer, which is a great movie, actually. Did he direct The Rocketeer, or am I thinking of Ron Howard? No, maybe it is Joe Johnston. Anyway, Joe Johnston's a great filmmaker in his own right, but he was working in special effects at this point with ILM. And so they would paint these things directly onto glass in many cases. And then that's placed in front of the camera. And yeah, like it's incredible. Like there's a really great documentary on Disney Plus.
I have seen
on
that.
ILM. Yeah. Oh yeah. So you
And I've seen the matte paintings, but I still am not quick to recognize them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's by design.
Right.
They're incredibly detailed, beautiful creations in many respects. I'm never going to find this. Oh, hold on.
But that
Almost.
little light, oh my gosh. So for those listening, oh no, yeah, go ahead.
No, go on. Yes.
No, I was just going to say, for those listening, the image that I have on screen is like, they're in the reactor shaft or whatever, and there's sort of like a dome of light that is their lightsabers reflecting, but it's reflecting in a way that is like obvious that the room is very small. And then around them you see untouched, unperturbed darkness in the rest of the, like basically it's just very obvious where the room is, because only a very small portion of this image of this scene is illuminated.
I don't know how this is going to carry across webcam, but
Oh, there it is. the matte painting. Angle it down a little bit. Oh, no. Oh, that's good. No, angle it down a little bit. Let's try to. Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good. Whoa. Yeah, you can see the little hole where the where the bubble is, basically. Yeah, where the bubble of light is.
So this, according to this book, was painted by Ralph McQuarrie.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So, yeah. Incredible work.
That's really
and in that ILM documentary, you'll remember Joe Johnson sort of going on about how he had to repaint all of the Cloud City ones because Ralph McQuarrie, as gifted an artist as he was, couldn't draw clouds, couldn't paint clouds. And so Joe Johnson was like subtly, got his legendary boss to be, reassigned to other things so he could work on the clouds.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. Anyway, that's neither here nor there with the music, but I thought it was such an interesting image, such an interesting last frame for this section that it would be fun to highlight. Yeah,
no, thank you. I wouldn't have noticed that and highlighted it. And we're at the end of the minutes. Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this was a very this has been very fun. There's so much good stuff here. Obviously.
I hope so, because it's probably one of your longer episodes. I apologize if anybody had anything else to do while trying to squeeze in listening to this episode.
While being forced to listen to this against your will. Well, okay, I'm going to run down the themes really quick, the stats and everything. Okay, so the cue from the set of minutes was 11 M1 Through the Window. And then the musical themes were Imperial March, the Dark Side motif, something similar to the Chromatic Knell, Yoda A section, Cloud City 1, Lando's Palace, and Han and Leia A section. And then if you have the soundtrack, this is Clash of the Lightsabers, or The Clash of Lightsabers. Yeah. Are you ready to do the Star Wars Music Minute Questionnaire for the third time?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you want to know your previous answers before you say your new answers?
No, I don't think so, because I think I already remember them too clearly and I want to try and avoid saying the same thing.
Fair enough. Okay, question number 1. In exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like?
This is always the hardest one.
I know. But as a repeat guest, you have the benefit of having several goes.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of feel like to make my life easier, I should almost say, like, what does this section of Star Wars sound like? Because... Yeah. See, whatever I say, I'm not going to be happy with. I should have prepared. I prepared for literally everything else. I should have like had some really
for the important
pithy.
Things.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We can come back to it.
No. I'll say something really simple, but it works for these. I'll say elegant musical storytelling. Like I think that's kind of what it is.
Absolutely.
Or like elegant or like rhythmical musical storytelling. I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
I'll say elegant. Unless you feel very, very strongly.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope,
all right.
That's fine.
Previously, you said nimble orchestral nostalgia and
that's
mythical orchestral memory. So
Yeah.
It sounds like you kind of have I'm getting a feeling of what you feel about Star Wars music. Yeah. Okay. What is something related to Star Wars music or sound that you are curious about or want to learn more about? It doesn't have to be a deep dive. It could just be like any little thing if you want.
Yeah, I think, I remember, I think it was Frank that was saying that like he wanted to know like, what went on with Rise of Skywalker and that kind of behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, like I would love to hear more unreleased music, like, or, written even but not recorded, like, or recorded but not released, like, the alternate take of Binary Sunset, I think is really interesting to hear that and consider why they didn't go with that music and what led John Williams to write that music in the first place, because it just brings out a different emotional layer of that scene. And like, I'm sure there was music written for Empire that wasn't used. I mean, we know that there was music that was pasted in, and especially in the Hoth beginning. But yeah, like I just want to, I don't know. That's a curious thing that I want to track down a little bit more of.
Yeah, I would actually be really curious about that too. Previously, you said, "What will Natalie Holt's soundtrack for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series sound like?" And
I think Frank said something similar.
yeah, he said that too. And then I think the next time he answered it was like, "What happened for that?"
Something not great happened. And I don't think it's anything on the composer. But something not good happened. Anyway,
Anyway, and then you also said, given all the new directions the various Star Wars scores have gone since John Williams was at the helm, will we ever return to the original sort of orchestral sound? And if so, how will we get there?
Yeah.
I'm curious about that too.
Yeah, still curious. Like, I think Andor moves us to a place where different styles can bring a high quality of musical storytelling.
Yes.
But it's not the same model.
No.
And it perhaps shouldn't be for Andor. But like, I don't know, God, like for Ahsoka, are we going to get like digital sound design type music, like trailer music? I don't know. Are we going to get something a little closer to what she's been scored with before?
Well, okay, I guess a question that I have for you is, how close do you feel the animated series get?
Well, like, very, like, too close in a sense that, like, and like, no shade on Kevin Kiner. He's obviously a very talented composer, but yeah, like in Rebels, for example, like there are some moments which are like it's almost like a Star Wars musical jukebox. It's like you kind of like start it up and the relevant moment kind of kicks in, and it's fun and it works for an animated series. But like I wouldn't.
Rebels is.
Yeah. Exactly. And I should say I'm almost completed a rewatch of Rebels, which I've loved. The only reason it's taken me this long is because I've really eked out every episode of the final season because I've really, really enjoyed it. But yeah, I like it. I don't know that it really, and the Clone Wars has much of an original sound, and that's maybe not its place to, but like, yeah, except for like, Clone Wars season 7 where he brought in like this kind of Blade Runner CS80 Vangelis type thing, which was interesting, but also like in total break from the musical sound that came before it. So yeah, I don't know. But certainly when I think of Ahsoka, I think of a John Williams-esque sound. So
Yeah. I'm super curious. I would like a John Williams-esque sound because she's not a Jedi, but a Jedi. But I also am wondering, since is she in the quote unquote Mandoverse? Is she considered part of the Filoni-verse? I guess so, it makes me kind of wonder if it will be more like Mandalorian. I don't know.
Which in my view would be a lost opportunity, because I think for all the things that Goranson's soundtrack does really well, the big kind of mystical space opera moments, it doesn't do very well. I think the music for Luke's kind of rescue, in the end of Mando season 2, like it just feels like it's a different universe from that of the films, the cinematic Star Wars. So yeah, I kind of feel like Ahsoka is a mythical, spiritual character in many ways, that space opera type thing. And so I think your media ventures remote control production type sound is not really going to work in the same way. But that's probably what we'll end up with. Because that's what's in vogue.
Oh, I hope not. We'll see. We'll see pretty soon. Okay. Question number 3. What is a score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars?
Okay, this one I did prepare for. I don't know, like because one of my day jobs is I host a radio show about film music. I hear like a lot of film music, a lot of new film music, and so I thought it would be nice to include something new that I've been enjoying this time around. And it's a TV show called Flashman is in Trouble, which I have not seen. I have not seen the TV show at all, but I hear it's quite good. But the soundtrack is great. It's by Carolyn Shaw, who exactly. Who wrote the great Partita
To the left, to the side, to the middle, to the front, to the back. It's really catchy. She won a Pulitzer for it.
Yeah, exactly. It's fantastic. And I think she's a really interesting composer. And it's a TV score, so it's necessarily quite different. But it includes some really interesting vocal work and some interesting musical ideas. There's a little bit of influence, I'd say, in there of almost Johan Johansson's Johan Johansson's Arrival, like the kangaroo, the na 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 na. If you've heard that, a few moments of that, but like she really takes the vocal writing in a different direction. So like I'm interested to see the TV show, but like also like it's just a really cool soundtrack and awesome to see a celebrated contemporary composer, make their way into the film music world rather than kind of apprenticing through just the film media composing.
Yeah,
place.
I didn't know that she was doing that, which is really, really cool. Now I kind of want to see the show. And given how these things go, I probably don't subscribe to whatever streaming platform it's on. So, previously you said Watership Down and Vertigo.
That sounds like me.
Good. Yeah, we had some Vertigo references today.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Dan, where can people find where can people keep in touch with you, find what you tweet and post, buy your stuff? I will plug anything that you don't plug, so.
Well, probably the best way at the moment is just my website, which is dangolding.com. It's like a portfolio. I kind of keep it up to date with my projects as they come along. Usually I would have just said Twitter, but like, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Depending on when you're listening to this.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've decided now, unlike a few other people like Frank, who obviously has got much more self-control than I, that I am going down with the ship with Twitter. So I guess we'll see what happens, but I'll be there. I do have Mastodon, which I use infrequently, but I do actually use. I can't remember how to find
I'll put a link in. I'll find you and put a link in the show notes.
Yeah. Other than that, that's about it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, you get the Untitled Goose Game if you haven't already. Dan did the soundtrack, and also some Frog Detective games.
That's true.
Very catchy soundtracks.
I really enjoyed working on the third one of that.
Did you play trumpet on the last one yourself?
Yeah, in one track I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I really mostly these days compose for virtual instruments, but the one track I decided for the main menu, I was like, you know what, I'll actually do this properly, and got out my trumpet and my saxophone, which I shouldn't have. The saxophone section of that is I would say pretty awful, but but the trumpet I think is good enough to fool a non-trumpet player, which is really the goal. But no, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like a jazz noir western, which is an unusual combination of things. So I had a lot of fun playing with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully there will be a vinyl of that maybe at some point. I have no firm
fun.
plans to announce that, but it will be. I think there will be.
Well, that's fun. I've heard all of the albums, but not played the games. But I'm open to playing the games. I'm just not good at games, and don't have time for games.
These are games that are really just like, they're about the dialogue. They're not really about like,
Oh, good. You don't have to be good at games.
Yeah. Like they're just funny to read what the characters are saying to each other. They're really incredibly well written by Grace Brooksner, who's a game dev here in Melbourne. And she's like 24 and taking over the world. Yeah.
That's awesome. And finally, you have a book, Star Wars After Lucas, which I have read. And it is very interesting to read, given that you wrote it. It came out before The Rise of Skywalker. And so...
It sure did.
Yeah. So it's funny to read in time, because there's a lot that like, you're like, who knows? And we know the answers that you're positing the questions for. So, yeah.
Yeah. And like at the time, a lot of people asked me like, don't you just want to wait until like, and the thing is completed? And like at the time I was like, no, because I think it would be more interesting to have a snapshot. And I agree, because like, I think there was a lot of, should we say, soured feelings by the end of the sequel trilogy for a lot of people. And like, I had the advantage of writing when it was a project in motion. And I think actually in many ways that helps to see through some of those feelings, which are now like just so all encompassing. Like, like I think people still forget that like when The Force Awakens came out, like 95% of the film going public was like, this is amazing. Star Wars is saved. And like, the attitude has changed somewhat, even towards that film, I would say.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. Oh, it's what a time.
But the one thing I was just going to say super quickly is that book is coming out in paperback middle of this year. So hopefully there'll be a little burst again for it. But yeah, I guess we'll see how we go. I was tempted to update it, but I don't know. I have a lot of projects.
Yeah, you don't need to update it. I really think the snapshot in time thing, I wouldn't mind having that for more media. Again, sort of, maybe it's just the feeling like I'm losing my grip on like time, just because so many things being updated in front of our eyes without knowing when things. I kind of crave things where I just know when they took place, when they were written, so that I can just like understand the reference. And I don't know. Anyway, it's just my thoughts.
No. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. Thanks, Dan, as always.
Literally my pleasure. Yeah, I can't wait to hear the rest of the season. I will definitely be listening.
We'll try to throw in some fun little Easter eggs for you. Wonderful. Oh, I was about to just say goodbye to you instead of saying goodbye to the show. So so thanks for listening. You can find Star Wars Music Minute and me, Chrysanthi Tan, also probably still on Twitter at this point in time. And if you want to join my Discord server, which is it's a great place, but also just it's a place where you have more word count to talk about things. And so, I'm not leaving social media, but Discord is where I'll flesh out my thoughts more. If you want to join some conversations and ask some questions that I'm rambling. If you want to join my Discord, I'll put a link in my description to my Patreon, and you can just join at any level, but that's sort of like a quality control source for people on my Discord. So with that, we only have a few more episodes left this season, several more episodes left this season, almost at the end of the movie. All bangers here on out. Get excited. And yeah, may the Force be with you, and thank you for listening to Star Wars Music Minute.